This is Atomic Shinobi and today I'm going to narrate second and final part of What If Naruto was accidentally sent to another dimension by Jiraiya. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no more time, let's start the story.
Luca at night. Yuna is wearing an ankle-length teal nightgown as she sits in front of a mirror. Lulu's face is blank as she brushes her hair, her thoughts deep in concentration, which isn't all that unusual for her. She is also wearing a dark, violent-colored nightgown. Her dress covered her shoulders and hung down to her ankles. One would think she would wear something a little looser for her daytime attire. She is a rather unique individual, though. As Lulu combs her hair, Yuna doesn't say anything, her mind a jumble of confused ideas with a tiny dull piercing the mirror. Lulu sees Yuna's eyes daydreaming. "Something bothering you?" she asks, still concentrating on combing Yuna's hair. Yuna keeps her eyes slightly downcast and doesn't say anything. She responds by shaking her head slowly as she brushes out her hair. Lulu holds the bottom strands gently in her free hand. "Yuna, I've known you since you were but a child. I know if something is bothering you now. What is it?" As each second goes by, she lowers her head and looks down at her feet. Am I a bad person?" Yuna whispered, fearing a response from Lulu or a reprimand. As she delicately takes another side of Yuna's hair to brush, Lulu doesn't say anything despite having a solid suspicion as to why she feels this way. Lulu asked, "No, you are not a bad person. Yuna, why would you think such a thing?" Her bangs slide forward to cover her face as she says, "I was indecisive again, and I hurt someone. Doesn't that make me a bad person?" She stiffens slightly in anticipation of a reprimand from Lulu. "I ran off Naruto. I was indecisive when I had to make a choice." Rather, she hears the brush silently and softly stroking her hair. "I do not think you are a bad person. There will always be choices that we shall be reluctant to take. This happens to be one of those said choices. You are young, so do not degrade yourself. Naruto is a grown man." She grins at herself. "Besides, with the small amount of time we have spent with him, do you honestly think he would hold any ill will toward you?" Yuna tilts her head toward Lulu. Lulu puts the brush down on the desk and rests her hands on Yuna's shoulders as she leans next to her and looks into the mirror. "I do remember Naruto promising to help you accomplish your goal. We must become stronger, since I have a feeling he will be stronger as well. Don't you agree?" Yuna smiles and nods her head, "Yes." As they lay in their separate beds in their hotel room for the night, she gently lets go of Yuna and says, "Now let us rest. We have a long journey ahead of us." To go to sleep for the night. Lulu reaches between the beds and turns off the light between them, glancing toward Lulu's direction. Yuna moves to her side. She notices a black blob of the woman's hair with the help of the moonlight coming through the window. "Yes?" Yuna lets out a little eep at Lulu's abrupt voice. How did you know?" "I was fixing to ask you something, Lulu." With only the back of her head visible, the woman laughed softly and said, "Didn't I tell you before, Yuna? I've known you since you were but a child. Besides, you are not as quiet as you think." "Well, I was wondering, why did Sir Orin decide for us to stay another day in Luca? Could we have not stayed at the inn in Me and High Roads?" Yuna purrs a little before letting out a sigh. With a slightly agitated tone, she said, "Perhaps so we may rest due to today's events. I do not know what Sir Orin's thoughts are, nor do I wish to know. However, I do suspect so that if Naruto is at the Me and High Road Inn, we might not run into him. However," she mutters to herself, "I don't think Yuna needs to know about that. Now get some rest. You will need the rest, Yuna." Yuna puts her hand on her pillow in front of her and nods. Lulu, the woman she called, gives her a little She puts her hand close by and leans her head against her pillow, grinning and saying, "Thank you." She falls asleep slowly. That's it. Whoa. Thunk. The sudden sound causes Yuna's eyes to open. "What the hell? You just hit me." "Yeah, of course I did. You were snoring like an oversized gorilla." On the opposite side of the wall, Waka and Titus roar at one another. "That's it. You're going down." "Yeah." There were grunts and loud thunks from things being pushed around. As she sees Lulu leaving and softly shutting the door behind her, Yuna turns to face the voice and says, "If you'll excuse me for a moment, Yuna." Yuna stares at the ceiling while rolling onto her back, dragging the linens beneath her chin. Thump thump thump. "Why would anyone be at our door at this hour?" "How can I possibly know?" "You're lucky, lil blonde chimp, because I was planning to beat you to the ground." "That's a bunch of bullshit. You know I was about to kick your ass." Bang, bang, bang. "Waka, just answer the door." "All right, you'll be the next one after I show this boss. You want to Lulu? What are you doing in this place?" Boom. Yuna hastily covers her entire body with her sheets, throwing them over her head. "Gah, Lulu. What have you done?" Crackle boom. "Gah ha. We're sorry." As thunder and flames roar from their room next door, Waka and Tidus can be heard screaming in pain and agony. Silence returned to the inn a few moments later as she and Lulu's door was approached by gentle footsteps. She hears the door creak open and pulls her covers down. Barely able to peek over, Lulu thumpily closes the door after placing it slowly. Lulu once resides in her bed as if nothing had happened. And Yuna's gaze never leaves her figure. Yuna turns back to face the ceiling. I'd better say nothing, I don't want to aggravate Lulu as well. Yuna. Eep. Yuna ducks under her sheets when Lulu's voice suddenly reaches her. She cowers in her bed, fearing that her excessive noise has angered Lulu. Why yes? She asks. Good night. There was a slight movement in the sheets that covered Yuna's head. Good night, Lulu. Needless to say, there was not a sound for the remainder of the night. Nighttime at the inn on Mian Highway. Naruto is typically an outspoken and talkative guy. He has also witnessed a lot of things in his life that no one should see, but as a result, he has developed a great deal of fearlessness. He has battled against the Kyuubi inside his body, faced S-class missing ninja, and, most importantly, stood right hooks from Tsunade, the legendary sucker. For someone his age, he has very few fears. The first would be the closing of Ichirukas, followed by ghosts and ghost stories, and finally, the most prevalent for any male, women. Have I mentioned that Ichirukas is closing? Indeed, those are Naruto Uzumaki's most well-known fears, as he is currently dealing with one of them. Not just any woman, but a woman according to his estimation. She is a strong, irritable, and highly proficient taijutsu practitioner. He can only think of one of Jiraiya's sayings. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. One of the few statements from the perverted hermit that Naruto has truly embraced is that one. Which would account for his current situation since there was no sound coming from his inn room. Many people would assume they were asleep. However, the quiet inside would be Naruto sitting motionless in a chair, gulping down and perspiring. Amber, his roommate, sits on the bed looking content. Her left leg's ankle rests on the edge of the bed, while her right leg follows the edge. Her left arm rests against her knee, and her right arm leans back on the bed. She has been looking at him intently before being questioned. She spent about 10 minutes just staring at Naruto, taking in every detail and engaging in a little torture. Amber coos softly, so her tone instantly makes Naruto shiver and sends a shiver down his spine. She leans forward slightly and looks directly into Naruto's eyes, saying, I'll be nice. She leans back in her usual position and gets a nod in response to her question. If you'll be nice or I'll bite. Understand. Now then, first question, what's your name? The blonde in question said, Naruto Uzumaki, in a slightly elevated voice. Good, now then, second question. Where are you from? Says Amber, nodding her head. Naruto starts fidgeting in his seat and gulps. She doesn't realize I'm from a different dimension. Oh no. Why must all women be so frightening? Amber's coughing to get his attention interrupted his train of thought. Naruto exclaims, Konohagakure of the land of fire, out of instinct. Amber raises an eyebrow and leans forward. Her right elbow is not resting on her at the moment, so her legs are switching. Venom emphasizes the word nice, sending a chill through Naruto's body. Oh? She asks, rolling the O on her tongue. Where is that located? Play nice now. All Naruto could do was look into her eyes and feel utter terror. If he's lucky, she might not be too familiar with the geography of this dimension. Naruto is known for having extremely good luck, so this is a gamble on his part. Shouldn't she be familiar with every place? Correct? He gave the succinct response. 5 great shinobi nations. His gamble was in his favor because he prayed to God for whatever was out there. Amber's right hand cups her chin in a contemplative position as she looks up at the ceiling. You know, when you travel the world you tend to learn every place you're able to go. All of Naruto's hopes were dashed in an instant. If he weren't a stubborn knucklehead, he would probably be whimpering like a puppy as he shrank in his chair. Wasn't he lucky, though? So far, he has been successful in every gamble he has taken. Why does he lose the most significant bet? At this precise moment, Naruto chooses to express regret to old lady Tsunade for mocking her gambling issues, for everything he has done to her. This might be karma. Naruto stammered. Is that so? You must have traveled all over the place, ha 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 ha, in an effort to lighten her mood. Of course. I've traveled all over Spira. I know practically every place there is. She says, nodding her head and cocking her head back slightly as she laughs to herself. Naruto laughs with her, scratching the back of his head. With every second that goes by, their laughter gets louder. She shrugs, and Naruto's laughter instantly stops. I also know there is no such place as Konohagakure, let alone the 5 great shinobi nations. She says. Amber, however, keeps laughing to herself loudly. Could be added. She starts to get up and her laughter gradually stops. She takes a few steps toward her target. Growing taller than him, she puts her hands on her hips and leans forward to meet his gaze, saying, I told you to play nice, and I wouldn't bite. I'll ask you one more time, where are you from? In an effort to maintain some distance between them, Naruto places his hands in front of his chest and looks back into her eyes. She looks into Naruto's ocean blue eyes, and he turns to face her. I'm telling the truth. Honest. I'm from Konohagakure of the Land of Fire. I'm from another dimension, she says. With her right hand on her forehead and her left arm resting on her hip, Amber straightens up again. It makes her laugh a little. Oh, I see. That totally changes everything now, she says. Then Naruto exhales deeply. Right now, I'm grateful to whatever god there is who felt sorry for his soul. His gratitude to whatever deity was out there, however, was broken by a sharp pain that erupted in his head thanks to Amber, who used her right fist. What the hell kind of excuse is that? I'm from another dimension? If I was a blonde idiot like you, then maybe I would have fell for it. The blonde idiot yelled, it's true. I am from another dimension, damn it. Which, while holding his head, most people would enthusiastically concur with, geez, she's really powerful. Sakura is comparable to the old ladies, but not as severe. With her arms waving at her sides, the fiery redhead demanded, oh, is that so? Then prove it. Do something undimensional from here. Naruto lowers his head in contemplation while crossing his arms over his chest. Amber also taps her foot in anticipation while crossing her arms. Well? As he snaps his fingers in front of him, Naruto's head appears just in time. Got it! Naruto exclaims as he leaps to his feet, wearing a smug expression. Amber arches an eyebrow at him as he paces to a tiny gap in the room. His left hand was gripping the wrist of his right hand as he held it out. Without a clone, it takes me longer to make. I should do more one-handed practice, Amber observes with curiosity as she senses a slight breeze in the room. She turns and sees a small window closed. As she turns back to face Naruto, she sees tiny blue light swirling in a ball inside his hand. A sphere of light blue swirls in his palm, and her eyes widen. He removes his left hand from his right and holds it at chest height. Does this suffice? Amber approaches the light blue typhoon he is holding slowly without replying. Her fiery red hair was gently blown by a slight breeze from the swirl. She leans ever so slightly and tries to touch the swirling sphere with her finger. However, it instantly shrinks until it disappears before she can touch it. Naruto grinned slightly and said, unless you want your finger to be shredded, I don't think you'd want to touch it. She gets back up and coughs a little as she puts her right fist to her mouth. Naruto grins smugly and scratches the back of his head, saying, well, I suppose you may be from another dimension. With that display, I still don't fully believe you. Amber turns around and collapses back on her bed. So, what was that technique you use? Grinning, Naruto leaps onto his bed beside hers. That technique is called the Rasengan. My mentor taught it to me 3 years ago, said Naruto. When people inquire about Naruto, he is the kind of person who enjoys talking about himself. He is more than happy to tell people about himself if they are interested in him in a non-Akatsuki way. Thus, they spent an hour discussing him. Amber wants to know what kinds of methods are available, what he can do, and all the skills he has been taught. Naturally, Naruto made her laugh when he described all of the trials and tribulations he had to go through in order to develop his skills. Naruto quickly changed the subject because he wanted to learn more about her skills. The blonde asked with a faint smile, what kind of techniques do you know, Amber? He stoops a little, resting his elbows on both knees. Amber looks to her upper right, scratches her cheek, and straightens up. She smiles as her right arm flexes and her left hand holds her muscle. I don't really know any fancy smancy techniques like you do. I'm more of a hand-to-hand combat person. I'm very strong as well, she says. She poses her flexing arm and winks. Naruto looks up at the ceiling and laughs. Just because you don't know any fancy smancy techniques doesn't mean anything. I have a friend who can't do any other abilities besides hand-to-hand. He trained day and night 24/7. He's one of the most strong ninja that I know. I don't know if I'd be able to beat him, to be honest. Amber asked, bending forward to get a response. He must be muscular, tall, and very manly, right? Naruto's mind is invaded by a vision of Lee striking his charming pose with his thumb and gleaming tooth. Naruto immediately starts laughing while lying on the bed and dabbing at a tear. Hey, what's so funny? The flaming redhead exclaimed as he making fun of her. He'll pay for it, I see. Holding his right palm toward her and shaking it as though to say, no, Naruto sits back up and laughs. His breathing returns, and his laughter gradually fades. Sincerely, Naruto told Naruto about his friend's use of a few hand gestures. I apologize, but that made me laugh thinking of Lee as manly. He has a bowl-shaped haircut, wears tight green spandex with bright orange stockings, and has big bush brows. He goes around yelling about the springtime of youth. I can imagine how he must like that detail. I hope I never meet him in my life, if I want to keep my sanity, says Amber, giving herself a small shiver. Naruto smiles broadly and nods. Yay, Lee's a weirdo, but you know I wouldn't trade him for anything in the world. He's crazy. Yes, however, he's one of the most loyal friends you could ask for. He'd gladly give his life to protect you. Perhaps I'd like to meet him. Amber nods and smiles, her eyes narrowing darkly as she meets his. However, if what your description is true, there is going to be a green spandex bonfire. Amber smirks darkly and nods her head. Naruto laughs a little and says, "Oh, don't worry. I'm sure everyone would thank you for that. If you really do invite me to help you, I'd love to help." This woman is exactly like Anko, Naruto says, shivering a little. A question from their previous conversation, or rather, interrogation, comes to mind. Never get on her bad side because she has the strength to back it up. The woman nods to him and says, "Amber, you said you've traveled all over Spira, correct? Why are you traveling Spira? Are you traveling alone?" After giving him a quick glance, Amber sighs and says, "Yes, I'm traveling all over Spira alone. I'm searching for something." Before you ask, she gets a little, "What are you searching for?" From the blonde on the other side of her, she looks at it distantly, and her right hand clenches into a fist. "My final heaven." Naruto raises an eyebrow in Amber's direction. "My final heaven," he told himself again. "What is that exactly?" Amber releases her fist and lets out a little sigh. Her right hand pulls her undershirt out slightly as her left hand lifts a silver necklace with a ring on it. She shrugs as she says, "To be honest, I don't know. I don't really remember anything about my childhood, only that my parents left me with this ring." This silver ring features a roaring lion's head. She puts her hands on her knees and puts the necklace back in her shirt, saying, "All that I know is that it's called Griever. That is all I know of really. I suppose I'm searching for who I am. All I have to go by is this ring, and that I'm searching for my final heaven." Naruto's eyes are lowered slightly as he gazes at her. Having no recollection of her past and traveling alone must have made her feel lonely. "How long have you been searching for?" Amber looks down toward the right and scratches the back of her head. Her eyes were filled with longing and loneliness as she said, "As long as I can remember. I don't know how I lost all my memories. Some say I must have got too close to sin, but I don't believe that." Naruto stares at her, aware of the pain in her eyes. He understands what it's like to be by himself, wishing that someone would embrace him for who he is rather than what he is. He looks at him with a gentle smile. "Amber." He begins by drawing her, and her eyebrows go up as she asks what he's talking about. "Perhaps we could help each other out." He tilts his head to the side and smiles softly. "Well, I have no clue where I am or where I'm going. Perhaps if you help me find a way back home, I'll help you find your final heaven and your past." Amber nods her head and smiles broadly. She meets Naruto halfway. By launching her fist in his direction, she muttered to herself, "All right, you got yourself a deal, friends?" At the end, even so, she continued to give Naruto a radiant smile. Reaching out, Naruto presses his fist against hers with his classic smile of all corny smiles. "Friends?" Naruto didn't realize he had just said what Amber had always desired, a friend of someone. She could only press her fist against his and repeat what he had said. They both retract their fists while smiling at one another. Amber lets out a loud moan as she looks out the window. "If I remember correctly, tomorrow is the last day they will be open to travelers. I heard that there is some operation going on there the day after. It's late. We have a long way to go to be at Mushroom Rock. We should get some rest. It's quite a way." She collapses on her bed without putting on her clothes. "Night." Naruto blinks his eyes as he observes her. He was unable to even acknowledge their destination or the reason behind it. He simply sighs as he reclines on his bed pillow. "At least we won't have to go alone anymore. However, I'm curious about what it will be like to travel in a world I don't know anything about." Naruto smugly chuckles to himself. Already, things were improving for him. He closes his eyes and gets ready for a restful night's sleep. He didn't know this is not going to be a pleasant evening. The mind of Naruto. In his mindscape, Naruto finds himself standing. He looks down the corridor and lets out a low moan. Now, what does the fox want? He stoops a little and has a blank look on his face. He looks around as he makes his way down a hallway's sewer. On his right, he noticed a new door that wasn't there all the time. Was it? Naruto looks at the door as he turns to his right. It is dark in the doorway, unable to see through. "What the hell? I'm thinking this," Naruto says as he moves through the doorway. He immediately pauses on the opposite side and looks around. He realizes he is in what appears to be a castle. Going left and right, the red carpet is flowing up a staircase. A large portrait of an obese green man is located in the center. Naruto furrows his brow. He takes a few steps forward and ascends the staircase by going to the left. When he gets to the top, he sees that the left and right sides converge at a single doorway. Farther on, he sees a locked door on his left. As he paces ahead, he sees the same thing when he looks to the opposite side. "All right, what on earth is this place? The fox couldn't be responsible for this. In my opinion." He moves forward unconsciously through the door where the carpet passes through. He turns his head and sees another flight of stairs that lead to a tiny crosswalk. His footsteps reverberate in the hallways as he turns and heads up the stairs without giving it much thought. Large double doors are closed on the right side of the small crossway. 2 double doors are open. When he looks to his left, he gives himself a sigh. This is becoming grating. What on earth is this location? He paces through the double doors. Opting to go to the left, there is a large room on the opposite side. Each of the 3 doors has a crossway. He had 2 on each side and 1 straight ahead. However, statues of soldiers with their swords crossed block the doors directly in front of them and to the right. He continues after deciding that going left is the way he should go. He sees another flight of stairs that spiral upward inside the left door. He moans as he looks up and sees how far up the stairs spiral. He lets out a sigh and walks past 2 statues of soldiers on their way up, but he doesn't hear them as they silently move their swords to block the way. As he ascends, Naruto occasionally passes 2 statues of soldiers. He exhales in relief as he reaches the summit. I'm going to stop entering doors into my head now. Never know where they lead. He realizes he's outside. As he passes through another doorless gap, he sees a small blood-red moon next to a bright blue moon. When he looks up, what the devil? There had been 2 moons since when? Damn it, what's going on? He sees bricks rising toward a platform, and tiny clicks divert his focus from the moons. Great, more stairs. After climbing the stairs, he comes to a platform with nowhere else to go. I've had enough of them already. No more climbing stairs. Well, it appears that I am in the right place. Now what? He looks out and visualizes the town from his previous encounter. The village isn't burning, though. What's happening? He looks up and sees the enormous sword piercing the sky, thinking, I've seen this place before. Welcome. The abrupt voice causes Naruto to flinch a little. The angelic voice he heard earlier is familiar to him, but he can't recall who the voice belonged to. Who are you? What are you doing in my head? I am but an eidolon residing inside your mind. Worry not, for I am not a threat. Naruto clenches his jaw a little because he already has one bastard inside of him. He doesn't require another. What are you doing in my head? In case you didn't know, I already have one crazy furball in my head. Thou does not remember our agreement? Naruto lowers his head and crosses his arms in contemplation. He ponders for a moment before raising an eyebrow. I remember our agreement. You'll help me protect my precious people and vanquish those who harm the innocent. Obviously you're a good guy in my head. Unlike the other one, however, I didn't know you would be residing in my head. What are you, to be exact? I am an eidolon. I am a guardian force. Should thou call upon me, I shall descend from the heavens and judge all those in your sight. Allow me to reside in your mind. I shall give you strength and a weapon to represent myself. Naruto looks down at his outfit and picks at it, asking, weapon? What weapon? Last I checked, I didn't have a weapon on me, just that I have a new look thanks to you. Though why black? Orange would be so much cooler. Naruto raises an eyebrow. Each Guardian Force junction to their summoner change their appearance with their power. The Lesser Guardian Force or an accessory Greater Guardian Force change their appearance. Upon changing their appearance, their summoners receive a weapon which best suits the eidolon, such as I have done and gave to you. You now represent me to other Guardian Forces and eidolons. However, the most strong of us all change not your appearance, but your genetics. Okay, so my appearance is to represent you. Got it. What do you mean the most strong change their genetics? Asked the brunette. I know not, there have only been legends of such guardian forces to have such power. Naruto wrinkles his nose and crosses his arms. Naruto looked around and whined. I see. You know, this is a bit weird to be talking to a voice that I have no idea of its source. Does thy wish for me to assume a body? Yay, that would make this a bit less freaky, Naruto says with a nod. As you wish. I shall take an appearance of one of my summoners of past time. Naruto has a passive expression as he looks ahead. He gazes up at the sword piercing the sky. After a few dozen minutes have passed. What's taking so long? Geez. I've been waiting for quite some time. Naturally, for the hyperactive blonde knucklehead, a minute of waiting can seem like an eternity. I apologize for the wait. It was much more difficult than I had anticipated. When Naruto hears a voice behind him, he turns around. Notices a woman close to the platform's opposite edge. Her bright orange overalls and red shoes are paired with a white shirt that puffs at her wrists and red gloves that cover her hands. The white shirt fluffs out in design as her overalls split at the stomach. She wore a little black collar around her neck, just like Haku. Her hair, which was tied with a ribbon that reached her lower back, was black with brown highlights and fell below her shoulders. Her piercing brown eyes are met by Naruto's ocean-like gaze. The woman asked, is this appearance not to your liking? Naruto was startled by the voice he had previously recognized. With a startled expression, Naruto gestures toward her. I thought you were a guy with the voice I was talking to earlier. Did I not say I'd take a form of a previous summoner? Though this one only summoned me once, which almost caused my demise. She tilts her head up toward the dark sky while placing her hands behind her back. Naruto gives a little eh and tilts his head to the side. She approaches Naruto while bringing her head back to eye level. However, that is a story for another time. She stands beside him, staring at the polished sword, and Naruto turns around again without turning away. The blonde asked, "So, care to explain what weapon you gave me and what not?" "Simply say the weapon's name, that is all you must do." Naruto looks at his right palm and blinks with a slight smile. He clenches his fist and asks, "That's it? Just say the weapon's name? I guess it's better than carrying something around with me could surprise them?" She asks, "You know of your weapon's name?" with a slight lift of her eyebrow. Yeah, you told me, didn't you, in our last encounter? Angel blessing, wasn't it?" Naruto asks, reaching up and scratching his cheek as he blinks and looks in her direction. He doesn't know the name. She barely gives a smile. "That is correct. If I had named it after myself, most likely you'd summon me instead, since I am an Eidolon as well." "What exactly is an Eidolon? You've yet to tell me what it is exactly." With her hands behind her back, she turns to Naruto and says, "That is a story for another time. It is almost time for you to wake. You've acquired another guardian force. All you must do is apply him as an accessory after that. It is up to him to meet you or simply give you some of his power." Naruto looks at her with an expression of shock. He hardly says, "What?" before being cut off. "Our time is up." The inn at Mii and High Road. Flashing up in his bed is Naruto as he sweats and pants. His left knee is bent close to him. He sees the sun rising into the sky. As he looks toward the window, he shifts his eyes and notices Amber sleeping soundly. He runs a hand down his face and looks toward his legs. Naruto gets out of bed and goes to the tiny bathroom in their room to freshen up, saying, "So much for a good night's rest." He halts in his tracks halfway to the bathroom. "You've acquired another guardian force. All you must do is apply him as an accessory after that. It is up to him to meet you or simply give you some of his power." He reaches into his pocket, her words echoing in his mind. He pulls it up in front of him while fishing for what he wants, the lantern trinket he had discovered earlier, in silver and gold. Was this the subject of her conversation? He places the trinket slowly on his left ear while looking at it and shrugging. He lowers his hands slowly, but nothing occurs. After that, it is up to him to meet you or simply give you some of his power. Probably doesn't want to meet me right now. Naruto sighs. He brushes it off and goes into the bathroom to get ready for the day. He cleans himself and then grabs the bathroom door. "Hi." Naruto spins around and thuds loudly against the door with his back. What the hell?" he exclaims as he looks down and sees a tiny thing reaching his thighs. This creature has a bald head and green skin. He had a small green tail that just barely protruded from the back of his gray cloak that covered his entire body. His feet are covered by matching shoes. His curious yellow eyes were fixed on Naruto. Naruto recognizes those yellow eyes right away, pointing to the green figure. "Accused?" Naruto exclaimed. "You're the one who I saw in those flowers." The creature nods and asks, So would you play with me?" Before Naruto can answer, he is shaken off the door by a loud bang. Amber yells from the other side of the door, "What the hell are you yelling about in there? Who are you talking to, you idiot?" She was sleeping soundly, but this moron had to go shout in the restroom, interrupting her restful sleep. She is not an early riser. Naruto looks down where the green figure used to be and straightens his stance as Naruto opens the door and turns to face Amber. He scratches the back of his head and says, "Smart guy, wish I could disappear like him." Naruto chuckles uneasily to himself. "No one, was just talking to myself." Amber marches into the bathroom and pushes him aside. Amber slams the bathroom door behind Naruto and uses one hand to push him out, saying, "Whatever, now get out, I need to freshen up." "Remember not to wake Amber in the morning." Naruto gets up and brushes the invisible dust from his pants, saying, "She's not a morning person." He opens their room door and goes outside to wait for Amber, saying, "I guess I'll wait for her outside the inn." The boat dock, as stated. "So you're telling me a blonde kid with whiskers and wearing orange went on this boat, with this summoner Yuna, to Kilika Island then to Luca?" "Yes sir, my guess would be they'd be outside of Luca in the Mii and High Roads by now. No one is planning on leaving the island for a couple of days, so we could give you a lift straight to Luca. Would be about 6 hours before you get there." Jiraiya places a hand beneath his chin and nods. "All right. It would be very helpful if you'd be able to do that for me. I really need to find this kid." "Sure thing. Just climb aboard and we shall sail in a moment." Jiraiya leans against one of the wooden pillars in the center of the boat and enters. According to him, they would probably be at the Mii and High Roads, outside of this Luca. "Okay. So in order to catch up to him before tomorrow, I'll have to travel Sanin style." Jiraiya gazes up at the clear blue sky. Jiraiya turns to face the boat ramp and says, "Now we just need to find a way to pass 6 hours." He can see a female engineer entering the ship. She must have a nice figure based on the clothes she wears. Yes. I do know how to kill 6 hours now. As he waves after the female engineer who entered the ship's interior, Jiraiya straightens his clothes. Excuse me, miss. Lucas City exit, does everyone have their belongings? Waka smiles and waves, saying, yeah, we got our belongings. I think we're all ready to head out, Sir Oren. As Waka smuggles, Lulu nods slightly and says, we better be on our way. I'd like to reach the inn before sunset. It is quite a ways if we walk. Oren nods in agreement near them. Kamari is as motionless as a statue. As they all yell with laughter, the 4 of them turn to face Titus and Yuna leaning toward Lulu. Waka said, I think they've lost it, yeah? She presses the tips of her fingers to her forehead and shakes her head. She calls them over, letting out a little sigh. Yuna and Titus turn to face them, pacing in their direction while grinning. We ready to head off? Oren gives Titus a nod. Waka turns to face them both. Waka crosses his arms and smugly says, we thought you two had gone crazy on us. We have enough crazy people on this journey. We don't need you corrupting Yuna now, yeah? Titus's brow quivers a little. Yay. Although I'm surprised she hasn't taken to any of your gorilla mannerisms. You look and act like one. It's a shock with the way she turned out. Waka gives Titus a fist lift. Hey, who you callin' a gorilla, you blonde chimp? Titus frowns angrily as he gestures toward Waka. You idiot. Waka makes a horizontal motion with his hand. That's it, you're going down. Ahem. Waka and Titus turn their heads slowly in Lulu's direction, instantly freezing and perspiring. Her eyes threatened to kill them if they went on. Last night, they were on the verge of death already. They don't want that terrible night to happen again. Both bowed their heads and scratched the backs of them together. They said, we're sorry. As Oren nodded, Lulu said, let us be on our way. Oren and Kamari leave with their group before the others do. Waka and Titus are constantly arguing while strolling side by side. Yuna and Lulu are next to each other and occasionally converse. The Tower of Hokage. Lady Tsunade. Shizune exclaims as she enters, holding Tauntaun. Tsunade quickly tosses her sake bottle onto her desk and shuts it as though nothing had occurred. The curvaceous blonde demanded, what is it, Shizune? Can't you see I'm busy? Tauntaun leaps from Shizune's arm and stands close to her feet on her 4 feet. It's Team 10. They need medical attention. Assume a condition is critical. He needs medical attention from you. As she rushes up to the door, Tsunade grabs her green cloak, hurrying to catch up to Tsunade. Shizune says, tell me his condition on the way. Hurry. As they head for the hospital. Hospital Konoha. Tsunade pushes the emergency operation doors open with her arms. The doors slammed into the wall with a booming sound. Tsunade works hard to advance. The reverberating slam causes Shikamaru and Ino to leap to their feet from the emergency room. Both teenagers see Tsunade pacing in their direction with a drip. A tiny drop of perspiration falls from her forehead onto the floor. Tsunade lifts her arm to wipe away a few stray drops of perspiration. Ino and Shikamaru quickly discover that they can move their legs in Tsunade's direction. Their eyes ask their question before they even get to the chubby Hokage. Concern for their comrade in arms injury filled their eyes when they arrive at the Hokage. Their leader gives them a slight smile, raising their aspirations for their mentor. Tsunade straightens her back by resting her hands on her hips. Ino asks her about Asuma's condition right after she says, no need to be all down and gloomy. Choji's injuries were not too severe. He needs roughly 2 weeks of rest due to chakra exhaustion, but for caution another week or 2. Just to be sure his fractures heal and his injuries do not become more severe. Tsunade removes an unseen speck from her lower lip. She smiled egoistically and then put her hand back on her hip. Who do you think I am? Asuma will be fine. I personally oversaw his wound treatments. However, he was extremely lucky. If that gash was any deeper, he may have punctured a vital organ. However, he will be bedridden for a month or 2. All in all, he has a few lacerations, fractured and very few broken bones, and stitches in his side. Ino exhales deeply and beams broadly at the good news. Shikamaru shoves his hands into his pockets and grins slightly. She looked away from Shikamaru and said, troublesome. So the 2 of us were worried for no reason is what you're trying to tell us. Ino turns to face her village chief and requests permission to visit their fellows. Tsunade cherished her role as a medical ninja. It is a great honor for her to be able to save lives. However, those who consistently interpret her language as being too straightforward are her downfall. Shikamaru sighs and hunches his back while mumbling something about legendary succor. No, I don't mean you weren't worried for no reason. If you had gotten Asuma here about 8 to 15 minutes later, we might not have been able to save his life. However, I'm not Tsunade, the legendary medical ninja, for nothing, he says. That title causes Tsunade's eyebrow to twitch in agony. How much she despises her losing run. How she wishes she had the blonde fool's good fortune. If only she were aware that his good fortune mysteriously disappeared when he needed it most. He stiffens and lifts his head at an angle, catching a glimpse of his leader out of the corner of his eye. Shikamaru, he says. Since we are in the hospital, I'll pretend I did not hear that, understand? As he backs away from the Hokage, he acknowledges her warning and lets Ino interrupt his conversation. Speaking incoherently about unruly women and their risky mood fluctuations with her left hand clenched close to her heart, Ino asked, "Are visiting hours open, so we may visit Asuma and Shoji, Lord Hokage?" Her rival and best friend Sakura had agreed to help her learn her medical ninjutsu, but she still feels like a burden to her team. She was being torn apart piece by piece when Tsunade refuses to let them visit. Her eyes drop pitifully. "No, you two may not visit as of this moment. Asuma and Shoji still need to be transferred to their designated rooms. As for you two, I need a report of exactly what the hell happened." I distinctly recall the mission information clearly stating, "Do not engage enemy. If report is confirmed, it was labeled an S-class mission for a reason." Before Ino responds to stop the physically and mentally exhausted woman from interrupting, Tsunade raises her hand. "Do not give me an excuse. As of this moment you have 1 hour to freshen up and meet me in my office. I want a full report and detailed summary in person. Is that clear?" She can clearly hear Shikamaru's footsteps as she lowers her head and feints away from them. If she heard him murmuring about losing an hour of sleep, she can't be positive. She feels depressed as she vaguely recognizes Tsunade passing by with a motion that calls out her Hokage. She twirls her ponytail in the air. When her title was called, Tsunade puts her hand on her hip and turns her upper body back toward Ino. She raises an eyebrow as she asks the young woman, "Yes, what is it?" She just wants to sleep and avoid wasting time conversing with her subordinates. Is it really that difficult to just want to relax in her cozy chair and sip sake without having to deal with paperwork or keep it a secret from Shizune? Her courage evaporates as she looks into her leader's eyes. She looked at him agitatedly. She must ask, but she is obviously tired and doesn't want to be bothered gazing at Tsunade. Her sky-blue eyes fade like a candle blown by an invisible wind. "Lord Hokage, after the report, may I have a word with you?" she asked, almost soaked into emptiness. Observing a clock on the wall of the hospital, Tsunade turns to face Ino with a nod of approval. She turns around again, her pigtails swaying at her momentum. "Tell you what, if you want to talk to me, I'll give you 20 minutes to get freshen up and come to my office. Shizune's shift started when you two made it here. I'll be free for a while till I've restored my chakra. We'll talk till Shikamaru shows up for your team's report, understand?" A glimmer of hope appears in Ino's eyes for her. She gives her Hokage a deeper bow. Tsunade waves her hand dismissively at her as she leaves the hospital, saying, "Thank you, Lord Hokage, I'll quickly be ready." Ino makes the decision to buy as much time as she can for their chat to freshen up. She opens a nearby window and jumps out toward her house. In Tsunade's office, about 15 minutes later. In her sizable office, fear reigns supreme. The atmosphere was filled with agony. Why in the world did she have to consent to meet with Ino Yamanaka? For reasons that were unclear to her, she had to agree. After all, she was her second apprentice. Even so, she didn't really spend much time with the girl in the healing arts. At least, she was successful. The door clicks open, revealing Ino as she lifts her head off the desk with a deep sigh. Tsunade idly opens a low drawer in her desk as Ino creaks the door shut. She sighs and puts a big bottle of sake on her desk with a loud thud. Fortunately, Ino is not like Shizune or Sakura. Why aren't my other students able to emulate Ino, allowing me to consume sake whenever I please? She quickly drowns her thoughts in sake because they are irritating her. She notices Ino standing in front of her desk and turns her attention away from her bottle. Leaning back in her chair, she said, "Might as well see what she needs." The sake bottle is still in Tsunade's left hand. "Well, what did you want to talk about? You're interrupting my nap time. This better be good." Ino's hand is clenched close to her heart. Tsunade left with a raised eyebrow. What the devil is wrong with her? She's behaving just like Hinata. Wow, there must be a problem with her. She usually has a lot of energy and will yell at anyone she wants except for me. Of course. Tsunade smiles inwardly at her ability to control others. Surely no one would dare to treat her disrespectfully. Jiraiya and Naruto. Maybe after all, they're both idiots. Am I truly this anxious to pose this query? Why am I feeling so anxious when it's nothing personal? Ino's hand dips a little to her mid-chest. When you look down, am I worried that she will choose Sakura over me? I am aware that my knowledge of medical techniques is lacking, but... Tsunade, exhausted and irritated, slams the bottle of sake back onto the desk after taking another swig. Getting in return the girl's attention. Pouting, Tsunade goes for another gulp of the alcoholic beverage. "If you have nothing to say, then get out. I could really use a nap. Do you have any idea how hard it is to get a nap without Shizune on my ass? It's hard enough without Sakura here," she says. The tone of her voice makes Ino stiffen. "Fuck it, girl. Just say it. I am aware that I am never this way. This is only how Hinata behaves." She tensed her body with her arms by her sides. Ino presses her eyes shut. She felt rejection erupting inside her head as she asked, "Would you please spend more time with me in training?" Lady Tsunade. The fear of rejection makes Ino shiver despite her stubbornness. She is aware of Sakura's superior medical ninjutsu skills. Tsunade looks at the trembling woman and blinks. Did she want to ask that question? I thought that someone would be letting me experience some sort of drama. She leans back in her chair and rests her chin on both of her fingers, saying, I already have enough drama with the villagers. Are you unsatisfied with your training regiment? With a start, Ino quickly raises her head to face her superior. She lifts her arm and puts it close to her heart once more. Number Lady Hokage, it's just I want to be stronger. I don't want to be useless to my teammates. Squeezing her eyes shut, Ino makes a fist at her chest and says, I'm not stupid. I know out of all us rookie 9 I grew the least. I want to be more of an assistance to them. I don't want to be standing on the sidelines, trembling with a mixture of helplessness and rejection. She reaches for her bottle to quench her thirst for alcohol and says, you're a medic, you're not supposed to be on the front lines. She wanted to draw her weariness in sake. When someone dies in front of me, I don't want to be useless. Ino exclaims as the bottle gets close to her mouth. Tsunade stops it. Sake glistening within the container, waiting patiently to get wasted. I know you're older and more experienced than I am. I don't know if you know what it's like to have someone dying in front of you that you care about. Tightening her arms around her body, an earthquake rocks Ino's soul, causing her body to tremble. I couldn't do anything when Asuma was dying in front of me. I tried everything I knew. I used all my strength. Nothing was helping. I've never felt so helpless in my life. If we were not within the Fire Country's borders, I'm certain he wouldn't have made it. Please, Lady Hokage, I don't want to be useless anymore. In her hand, Tsunade's sake bottle froze. The sake-loving Hokage had long forgotten. She gazes into the glistening liquid, her eyelids dropping. You're correct. I have more life experience and am older. I am aware of how it feels observing the death of a loved one. One of the most inspirational medical ninjas. You are a medial ninja who heals injuries. However, you are powerless to save the life of the person you care about the most. That sense of futility never leaves your spirit, haunting all the time. Your soul is constantly being picked at. At least you're willing to do what I was not willing to, stand and improve instead of running away, she says, slowly placing her sake bottle on the desk and turning to face the trembling woman. I understand Sakura is more talented than I am. She has medical ninjutsu talent. Please, she will be the one to claim your title as the greatest medical ninja. Such a sense of worthlessness is something I simply never want to experience. I'd like to gain strength. You're correct. Sakura excels at medical ninjutsu the most. Tsunade's gaze meets the trembling woman's hopeful eyes and says, but your talent lies in another part of medical ninjutsu. Sakura is more talented in using medical skills, she says, softening her gaze to focus on a single tear trickling down the young woman's cheek. I'm not going to dispute this. You are more skilled in ninjutsu, though. Among the two individuals, she doesn't have as much chakra as you, Ino. Additionally, possess more ninjutsu techniques. Only people who know Tsunade well would notice the slight tug on her lips that turns into a smile. You might be the best battle medic possible, but you might not be the better medic when it comes to being in the emergency room. Sakura depends on her limited genjutsu and super strength. However, you might be able to learn more ninjutsu when you feel like it. You're also very creative. You could also do genjutsu with ease. I'm sure, not to mention that your figure increases your flexibility and agility. Are you sure you mean that? Am I really able to surpass Sakura in anything? I won't have to look at her back anymore or be on the sidelines on any of our missions with my team. Ino's hopeful eyes sparkle while containing salty tears, and they seem like glass that could shatter at any time. I do. Tsunade nods, reading the young woman's frail eyes. Your training will be rigorous, though if you believe that during our time training with Sakura, I have been harsh, this will hurt on a completely different level. One will thoroughly instruct you in genjutsu, taijutsu, medical ninjutsu, and ninjutsu. Breaks will not be possible. There won't be many missions. Our time to fully develop you into a battle medic is limited. Only the fundamentals will be covered in your time. I don't give a damn about how difficult the training is. I'm going to smash through it for my friends. I'll do whatever it takes to get stronger. Fragile glass eyes eventually solidify into unbreakable diamonds. Tsunade nods and grins slightly, saying, that's good to hear. You had better maintain that expression. If it even slightly lessens, it will break your resolve. I'll give you a lot more training. Ino firmly establishes her position and gives Tsunade a resolute nod to proceed, saying, good. However, I shall be there to supervise on most occasions. That's the Ino I've known. Tsunade sighs loudly as she turns to face a wall clock. Well, we have roughly 15 minutes left before Shikamaru arrives for the report later. I'll need to come up with a new training plan for you, so sit down. She gulps down her sake and lets out a little belch. Oh. That was exactly right. How come you are more like my other two apprentices? allowing me to enjoy sake and other finer things in life without having to listen to a lot of noise. Ino laughs softly, barely audible to Tsunade, and smiles slightly. I guess Shizune and Sakura are too focused on their work. A little fun doesn't hurt anyone, is it? Correct? Soft and fragile from her moment of weakness, Ino's voice gradually returns to its natural tone, patching her wounds one tiny bit at a time. Tsunade reacts to her action by pouting and looking out the window with her elbow resting on the armrest of her chair after she slams her palm onto the desk. That's right. Is it really that difficult to request a brief respite? Paperwork, and more paperwork is all I do. Her palms reverberate as she stands up and touches her wooden desk. I'm the Hokage, for crying out loud. My 2 apprentices are forcing me into slavery. The sound of Ino's soft voice, which isn't always soft, most of the time it's loud, impolite, and vulgar, brings a faint smile to Tsunade's face. At least she isn't withdrawing from the experience, she says. When the door is knocked on, Tsunade sits down and gestures for the visitor to come in. As the 2 blonde women turn to face the opening door, they see a pineapple head enter the room and close the door behind him. Shikamaru's face is a mask of fatigue. His friends are safe. They have just arrived from a mission and have to report within 2 hours. Can't he just go home and sleep? He'll bring a written report in tomorrow morning or something. Shikamaru, rank Shunin. Reporting in person is always a drag. Reporting in from assignment. You're early for the report, Tsunade says, squinting at the Chunin. Don't you realize that you're taking up my sake time? How hard is it for me to find time like this? Do you know? I always carry 2 troublesome women with me. To paraphrase your well-known statement, let's finish this report now. Tell me everything that happened now. She narrows her eyes a little and adopts a more formal tone. Junin Captain, Asuma Sarutobi, Chunin Lieutenant, Shikamaru Nara, Chunin's Choji Akamichi, and Ino Yamanaka. Reporting mission completed. In confirming whether rumors of Akatsuki members within Fire Country are true or false, Shikamaru says, straightening his spine a bit as his slack expression disappears as he gets absorbed in the report. The mission has verified the accuracy of the intelligence. 2 members of Akatsuki have been confirmed. Even if he's a lazy person, I can always count on Shikamaru in getting detailed information, Tsunade says. Nodding at the information, she leans forward a little and addresses Chunin, who has a pineapple for a head. Can you identify the Akatsuki members? What was their goal in the Fire Country? Yes, they're Hidan and Kakuzu. Based on the information I was able to obtain regarding their goal with the Fire Country, we are unable to verify what their goals were. We suspect, though, that they were either just passing by or had paused to surrender a bounty. The members were initially seen close to a bounty office as previously mentioned. We are unable to verify their goals. I'm just sharing my personal viewpoint. Tsunade's gaze drops. Merely passing by? That is possibly one of the most logical explanations. If it had been Itachi or Kisame, then no doubt they would have not heard about Naruto. However, since it wasn't, this possibly confirms they know of his predicament. Tsunade bites her thumbnail in irritation, thinking, damn brat isn't even here, yet he causes so much problems. She turns back to Shikamaru and asks, from the condition your team has returned, is it true that there was a confrontation? Shikamaru lets out a loud sigh and says, yes, we were ambushed when we returned to Konohakagore to finish our assignment. He sighs after being given the all-clear to proceed, saying, as you are aware, we have escaped without any fatalities. I will begin once we have made visual contact with the targets. We should promptly report back to you, Asuma decided after spotting our target, Junin Captain, but we were ambushed at that time. He continues his report, hunching ever so slightly, as we were racing through the forest back toward Konoha. Shikamaru grits his teeth a little as he represses the memory. Fortunately, Asuma was able to identify them before they dealt us the deceptive blows. Both of the Akatsuki members that we had confirmed ambushed us halfway to Konoha. In their ambush, they made no use of jutsus. One of them, whom we verified to be Hidan, employed a type of soljutsu. Even so, I wouldn't classify it as spear fighting. At the end of the staff, it resembles a 3-bladed scythe. We verified his partner because Kakuzu didn't help his partner, leaving us without concrete claims regarding his skills. I can say that they have tremendous power. We gave them everything we had. They didn't block or dodge. They would accept it and move on. Hell, they simply sewed one of their heads back on after Asuma chopped it off. His eyes look past the wood as he slams his hand down on the desk. As Ino sits at a chair against the wall, Tsunade calms herself down and tells Shikamaru to continue. Her eyebrows twitch at his action. Yes, she shouldn't be angry at the fact that he slammed his hand on her desk with the attention at hand, she says. But hell, this is her desk. Only she can slam her hands on it. He straightens himself up in front of his leader while mumbling an apology. Within minutes of the fight, Hidan had performed some kind of prohibited jutsu on Asuma. However, I have committed its strengths and weaknesses to memory. It seems as though he can both stand in a seal he creates with his own blood and draw your blood into him. Any injury he sustains also affects you. He acquired a Suma in this way. At this point in the conflict, Ino was in the back for assistance. Since Hidan was Asuma's partner, Kakuzu didn't really get involved, mostly merely observed the conflict. As a result, Asuma, Shoji, and I were able to attack Hidan together. Even so, we couldn't compete with his strength. When Hidan hurt himself, he caused the wounds you discovered on Asuma. We were taunted by that bastard. Nothing we could do. That day, though, we were extremely fortunate. You could argue that we were simply getting in the way or that we were saved. Tsunade narrows her eyes slightly in Shikamaru's direction. This much information about not one, but two Akatsuki members is invaluable. Jiraiya may know some of them, but they have seen them up close. Even though they may not be aware of the other members' abilities, they can at least describe them in detail and provide detailed reports on their behavior. What really bothers her, though, is how they managed to escape. If their power overtook them, if they fled, they would undoubtedly be overtaken. Who was it that saved you? Shikamaru turns his head to the side and looks at the ground from an angle, gritting his teeth. He should be hiding in a hole somewhere else or chasing after the snake bastard like a lost puppy, but he never would have anticipated seeing him so soon while on a mission. Ino's head dips a little and her hands grab her knees as she tenses up a little, a shiver going up her spine because she never expected to see him out of the blue. Sasuke. High roads in me and, oh, I'm really hungry. He hangs his body over his arms, which sway with every step. He grumbles to his side and shifts his head to look to his right, saying, at least I'm not alone in my suffering. He was the one who starved while traveling with the pervert. He had never heard the pervert's stomach growl in hunger. He had to endure the so-called training he underwent. Sure, he became stronger, but only because he had to survive alone. As a growl rumbles through her stomach, she rubs it gently in the hopes of reducing the hunger. I'd call you an idiot, but I'm too hungry too. She looks away, shifting her gaze toward a smiling blonde. Let's hurry and head toward Mushroom Rock. Stop smiling like a fool. Travelers will not be permitted to pass through tomorrow. We have to get through today. She straightens her back and assumes a superior and more knowledgeable stance, but her posture is ruined by a growl in her stomach. Idiot attempting to appear superior. I'm sure we'll get there in time, so don't worry. The blonde smiles and looks ahead, his eyes darting to the red head, but only to be shot down with hunger. There must be a restaurant close by, right? As they pace down the dirt-filled road, his grin brightens the atmosphere. She crushes all hope as the redhead smiles and marches along the blonde. Nope, there isn't any food around there until we pass Mushroom Rock toward Jose Temple. We ought to have eaten breakfast before hurrying into the Mii high roads because of this. Naruto, you are a fool. She tries to hit him on the arm, but as he runs off, she feels a cloud of dust brush against her legs, forcing her to chase after him. Naruto, grinning broadly, looks back as he runs off with the redhead in tow. You'll have to catch me, idiot Amber. As he accelerates to a higher speed after hearing Amber's war cry, Naruto yells and turns to face Amber, who is grinning back at him as they play chance along the Mii highway. Luca, a woman on the boat, smiles and waves at the white-haired man as he paces slowly off the boat, saying, thank you for helping me with the chocobos. Your attention to them was greatly appreciated. She gives the white-haired man a cunning wink. I need no thanks, fair maiden, he says, looking at the woman from an angle while cupping his chin and projecting a charming aura. All I was doing was taking care of and relieving a young lady like you of such a burdensome burden. If we cross paths again, I'll relieve you of this burden once more. He circles slowly and speeds away, making a dramatic departure. Could you at least tell me your name? She yells at the white-haired man while leaning over the boat rails. Only able to see her out of the corner of his eye, the white-haired man tilts his head slightly in her direction. Don't be alarmed because my name will eventually be known all over the world. I'll tell you my name, fair maiden. He sees a stack of boxes to his right, the tops of which connect, and he jumps on top of them to get ready. The title, Frog Hermit, is merely a disguise, he says, thrusting out his palm while maintaining a strange stance. I shall tell you my true identity, he says, slamming his left foot onto the box with his left palm out, while simultaneously swirling his ponytail in a circular motion. I am the man who has no enemies in the north, south, east, and west. He adds, tossing a scroll into the air with his right hand, making a hand sign in front of his face. Not even in the heavens. He jumps into the air as the scroll descends, and a huge cloud of white smoke appears. White-haired frog tamer. He stands on a fairly human-sized orange toad, and as the toad puffs out of existence, he jumps off it and lands on a pile of shorter boxes, slowly spinning around. Even a baby would stare in awe. The great Jiraiya. Slamming down his left foot out with his left, he continues to bellow out, "That is me." His tears stop as he looks up, thinking, though I am in another dimension of course. I forgot they have never heard of Sanin or anything. He slaps his forehead and sighs deeply. I'm gonna have to start from scratch again if I want to get all the babes with just a dance again. Letting out a depressing sign, he sobs to himself, no one understands me nowadays. Leaping off the boxes, he continues his journey to locate his long-lost student, whom he could let run wild without him for a while. Having a loud, stupid blonde for 3 years can drive anyone crazy. Including a Sanin. He stops when he comes to a bridge that leads out of the docking area and asks a local for directions, saying, "Pardon me, but could I happen to have a moment of your time?" With wrinkled features, a long white beard, reading glasses loosely fastened to his face, and a pointed green hat on his head, an elderly man turns around hesitantly. "Yes, how might I be of service?" Even though his voice is deteriorating with age, it still has a sound of knowledge and wisdom. Jiraiya asks the man, gathering his composure for the situation, "I'm sorry, but do you know how I could get to me in Highroads? I'm trying to find my pupil. I was informed that he would be traveling toward me in Highroads after we parted ways some time ago." Highroads in the Mian. Slowly, the elderly man gestures with an aged hand down the bridge toward the main city, saying, "Head down this bridge." "Oh, yes, I know of such a place. You will arrive at the market plaza. Don't worry about the crowds because it isn't too crowded at this time of day. There are some big stairs close to the other side." As he continues to give directions, he takes tiny steps toward Jiraiya and says, "Go up those stairs and then cross the small walk path. You should find the city exit off to your right. After you cross the walkway, once you leave Luca, you will enter Mian Highroads. You will arrive at the Mian Highroads Inn if you follow the road." Jiraiya bows and thanks the elderly man, saying, "Thank you, sir, you've been a huge help to me. I'll follow your instructions and head out to locate my student. I sincerely hope he lives close to here." An elderly voice laughs. "You don't have to thank me. I'm an old person who only wants to impart my knowledge to young people. I hope you find your student quickly and stay well. May Yevon illuminate your way." Jiraiya bows to the elder once more. "I want to thank you again. If I want to catch my student, I have to be on my way once again. I want to thank you for your help." With his skill, he creates an invisible henge as he jumps off toward the other side of the bridge. "I'll need to be quick. I don't know if that brat walked or traveled the way ninja do. Only one way to find out." Jiraiya quickly reaches the exit before disappearing into the dusty trail. Highroads in Mian. "You got it." Amber tackles Naruto to the ground as both teens laugh while landing on the ground. Amber smirks playfully. "Ha! If I caught you, you'd be a huge failure as a ninja. In your rank tree, you must be the lowest rank." Laying next to him as they look up into the sky, she quickly glances over only to find a blush on his face with a slight irritated expression. "No way. Don't you have the lowest rank?" "Stop talking. The only reason it's an idiot is that I missed the 3-year promotion exams. I am completely prepared for a promotion to Chunin rank. I'd be perfectly acceptable as a Junin." Naruto quickly sits up in frustration as Amber's laughter overwhelms his defense. "Idiot." He gets up and brushes the dirt off his clothes. Amber leaps to her feet, accusing Naruto with her right hand. "You're the fool," she says. "Idiots only call other idiots idiots." Amber pacing away while Naruto complains to himself. Amber playfully switches Naruto on his arm. The entrance to Mushroom Rock is on the opposite side of this hill. With her hands on her hips, she stretches a little and turns her head back toward Naruto. "You coming? All that running got us here much sooner." "Sheesh, she hits harder than I thought. I think I lost most of my feeling in my arm," he says, calming his arm. With a nod he catches up to her and turns to face her. "What do we do once we reach this Mushroom Rock place?" the blonde asked, letting his arm drop languidly. A foot or so separates the two teenagers as they start to pace along the dirt trail. "As I've said countless times before, for you idiot, travelers can only visit Mushroom Rock today. The trail will be closed after today, preventing access for a few days, probably no more than a week." Before Naruto can ask her why, Amber interrupts. "We'll be able to cut through Mushroom Rock rather quickly. About what I don't know, so don't ask. Its area isn't very large, more of a narrow area to go through. We could then proceed to Jose Temple and inquire about staying overnight in one of their rooms." "Is that all? Here, I was hoping we'd be able to do or see something cool, but all we do is walk, walk, and more walk," the blonde says. Sighing slightly, the hyperactive teen complains. "My feet are starting to hurt." Fortunately, he has been able to use a few shadow clones to keep his chakra control training going, but he needs to resume physical training because the body can lose a lot of dexterity after a few days of not training. "Well, how much longer till we arrive at Mushroom Rock?" "Sheesh, I wouldn't have hung out with you if I had known you would complain so much," groans the fiery redhead. As she gently massages her temples. Looking back up, she points forward. We've arrived, are you happy now? Me and Highroads will no longer have walkie-talkies, we can now stroll around Mushroom Rock. Sarcasms from the irritated teenager. Naruto humps as he walks past Amber. Glaring, he sees an arch path made of rocks ahead, and he points back toward Amber, asking, "Is this the entrance?" When he gets a nod, he smiles and lowers his hand, saying, "Well, let's get started." He smiles as he takes her gloved hand and pulls her along. Pulling her hand away, she glares at the back of his head as they continue down the new trail. 1 minute he's whining, and then he's excited and dragging me along. Sheesh, talk about unpredictable, she says, groaning as she lowers her head while being dragged. After a few minutes in Mushroom Rock, they see a group of military personnel moving some kind of equipment to their right. Amber and Naruto spot a big cliff with a beach at the bottom in the distance. They spot a big tower that faces the ocean. They both raise their eyebrows and continue walking side by side. Naruto stops as he spots a familiar patch of gray and white hair and stares at the patch of hair sitting on a rock. Naruto has seen many beaches during his travels with Jiraiya, but this one was different because he could only look out into the ocean's blue water, with the sound of the waves crashing into the beach barely audible in his ears. You know, staring could be considered stalking when you watch her every move like that. Amber smiles and pinches Naruto's cheek, stretching it out as she waves her hand in front of his eye, making strange cooing sounds. She then follows his gaze and finds him staring at a woman with gray and white hair on her head, staring out toward the ocean without making any noise, her strange black clothing crashing in color with the surrounding rocks. It hurts. Naruto moves his head, causing Amber to let go of his cheek. He gently caresses his now sore red cheek, looking back toward the patch of gray and white hair. He assumes a thinking pose. It is not that, but that hair seems familiar. There are only 2 people with that kind of hair that I know. I met one in Luca, and the other is not a part of this dimension. This must be her. I'm going to go say hello. He smiles cheekily as he looks back. Be good now, don't leave me behind and get lost. Ignoring the fiery redhead's yell of, "Idiot," he jumps away from Amber and heads toward the woman he remembers. If I remember right, I believe she said her name was Pain. I really should pay attention to people's names more often. He laughs sheepishly at himself and is now a few feet away from the girl he thinks is Pain. He stammers out, scratching his cheek, "Pardon me, but are you Pain by chance?" He observes her standing still and staring out to sea. There is a brief pause before the woman breaks the stillness as the sound of the waves lapping against the white sand fills the air. "Who's asking?" Naruto shivers at her voice and, after a brief pause, returns to answer her question. "It's me, Naruto." The blonde observes that her voice is lifeless, and her back is still turned toward him. "Luca is where we first met. Perhaps you don't recall, but you bought me lunch when I was going hungry." He tries to lighten the mood by laughing sheepishly, and when he sees her moving, he lowers his hand and looks at her. "Is that you, Naruto?" Pain's eyes widen as he turns to face Naruto, and as he looks into her red eyes, he sees those familiar eyes. The same eyes he had as a child, staring into a mirror or into water. That are void of life, those eyes that held life when they first met, now void and empty. Even though he hasn't known Pain for very long, he doesn't want those eyes attached to her, and he had never wanted to see anyone with those eyes. "Yes, it's me, Naruto." He chooses to spend some time with her in order to console her, hoping that he can restore some sort of life to her eyes. Highroads in Mian. The man with the white hair occasionally turns his head. Jiraiya jumps through the dirt trail in flashes, memorizing his surroundings, utilizing a few dilapidated structures as jumping trees. The trees in Fire Country are something I miss. Never was one for traveling on the ground. Jiraiya's brief bursts of speed make her nothing more than a passing flash to the drivers on the Mian highway. Travelers start to change their methods as Jiraiya continues on the dirt trail. Well, he changed more drastically. Travelers who used to be happy and enjoy the trail are now yelling, panicking, and other negative emotions. What are they doing? I doubt this is a typical scene. Jiraiya stops and yells at a random man who is running in his direction. "Hey, what's going on up ahead?" "Fiend." The fiend is back. The terrified man exclaims as he dashes past Jiraiya, his arms flying in all directions. Jiraiya's gaze follows him, then he looks back with a raised eyebrow. Jiraiya begins to cover the gaps in the dirt-filled trail, saying, "Well, so much for that, fiend." Yells have been repeated all along. As he keeps going, he occasionally hears about chocobos, the yellow bird he discovered during the boat trip on his third foray from the dirt trail. He arrives at the inn on the Mian High Road. Well, I don't think this happens very often. When he got to the inn, he observes that although most of the travelers have left the area, a small group of them seem to be fighting the monster known as a fiend. Jiraiya stays on the sidelines and assesses the circumstances. He observes that the fiend is much taller than the male humans. Jiraiya makes a snap judgment based on the fiend's physical attributes. It is exceptionally strong. He looks at the individuals battling the fiend. After making that analysis, 3 range supporters and 3 close combat personnel, he shifts his eyes to get a better view of the range fighters and, to the best of his knowledge, predicts their occupation: 2 sword specialists and a spear specialist. The young lady in white is probably the group's medic, given that she doesn't fight and instead supports everyone else. Finally, the orange-haired man appears to be the long-range fighter with that spherical weapon. He shifts his gaze toward the fiend and observes that the close combat fighter weapons are not doing much. I assume the woman in black is calling upon techniques. I assume she is the ninjutsu-like specialist, with the exception of the red-clad man brandishing a big, wide sword. The fiend's skin appears to be stone-like, will require a powerful, heavy weapon to pierce through, which I don't possess. It looks like I'll need to collaborate with jutsus on this. His analysis reveals that the big fiend is hesitant to approach the fire elements that the black-clad woman is casting. He smiles as a thought suddenly occurs to him. His smile gets bigger as he says, "Time to take one from the old man's book." The woman in black casts a stronger flame element toward the fiend, and Jiraiya sees an opening as all of the close combat fighters flee back. Of course, with a Jiraiya twist to it. Hesitating more than the first few times, the fiend retreated a few paces. "Now, get back!" Jiraiya yells fiercely, hurrying through hand signals. Earth element, moving land, river. Mud water bursts forth from the earth, rushing in the direction of the fiend and carrying him away in an instant. Jiraiya shouts out another technique while rushing through another set of hand signals. Jiraiya bursts through a third set of hand seals, earth element, earth dragon missile. As the mud water at the bottom of the water shapes into the head of a dragon, mud shoots out of its mouth toward the fiend that was washed up by the muddy flood. The hand signals Jiraiya uses to finish, fire element, fire dragon missile, are still in the Torah seal. Jiraiya inhales deeply and then shoots ferocious flames that cover the mud bullets flying in the direction of the fiend. As the fiend screams in agony on the ground and his skin is scorched by flames, he is engulfed in ferocious flames with a loud clash. The mud river and earth dragon start to disappear into the earth as he removes his hands from the Torah seal. The blue wind swirls into Jiraiya's palm as he darts forward and pulls his right hand back. Jiraiya leaps to the side and places himself behind the fiend, who dashes the remaining distance. He yells out his last move while thrusting his right palm forward, Rasengan. As the wind drives the flames into the sky, Rasengan comes into contact with them. The fiend is ravishly devouring the monster as the flame roars fiercely and swirls. The sphere of flame is propelled forward by the force as it pushes the Rasengan farther. "You in the red. Finish him off," the red-clad man says, sliding his left foot across the patchy grass and dirt. His large, broad sword's hilt is securely in his hands with the blade pointing toward the ball of fire. He gestures the hilt of his sword close to his head. He drags the tip of his broad sword against the ground as he kicks off from the ground and moves it across his body. As he determines the timing, his grip tightens on the handle a few meters away from the ball of flame. The man slashes in the direction of the ball of flames, using his body weight for extra strength. The ball of flames was forced to change its trajectory into the blue sky by striking the sphere at an angle. The man in red leaps into the sky. Gazing up at the blue sky with the sphere of flame, he rises just above the sphere, his red cloak billowing in the wind. The red-skinned man grunts and slashes down, throwing the sphere back into the ground. When the bubble-like materials glisten into the sky, flames erupt around the crater. With an expressionless face, Jiraiya watches as they ascend into the sky. The hermit sighs and scratches the back of his head, saying, "That's unusual. This is a different dimension." Of course unusual things would happen. Of course, as the group of warriors pace toward him with their weapons held non-threateningly, Jiraiya puts his hand back down to his side. "Genius. Way to state the obvious." Despite this, Jiraiya is still cautious and keeps his kunais hidden in his sleeves. The red-clad man moves ahead of the others to Jiraiya. He starts talking while nodding his head in Jiraiya's direction. He bows toward Jiraiya as his friends join him, with the exception of the dirty blonde who smiles at Jiraiya. "Your assistance was appreciated by all of us. We owe you our thanks." Additionally, he observes that rather than bowing, the blue humanoid beast is nodding slightly in his direction. He believes it is his expression of appreciation, but since he doesn't know about their cultures here, he just makes assumptions. Jiraiya doesn't care that he's a beast after all. "You have already engaged in combat with a man who resembles a shark and uses water techniques and a large, broad sword. You tend to focus on the sword swinging at you and ignore the bestial features." Jiraiya makes a dismissive hand motion and shakes his head without showing much emotion. He crosses his arms in front of his broad chest and raises an eyebrow at the group inquisitively. You need not worry about gratitude of the likes. I just did the right thing to do. Formalities aren't my thing anyway. Anyone mind explaining to me what happened? He asks. His gaze slides to a female teen wearing a white dress, and shuffling reaches his ear. He relaxes at her physical attributes and realizes she poses no threat. Even so, he had assessed their fighting prowess before participating. His posture slightly relaxes as he realizes she has little to no offensive capabilities. However, she is still anxious for her friends in case something goes wrong. Speaking softly to Jiraiya, she places her clamped hands close to her legs. That fiend had shown while we were nearing the inn. It appeared the fiend had been terrorizing the travelers of this inn. We decided to aid the travelers in their time of trouble by fending off the fiend. We had some trouble, but thanks to you we were able to defeat it once and for all. Again, I must express my gratitude. Bowing at this point, she thanks the man with white hair. He puts his left arm on his hip and lets go of his crossed arm, saying, "Don't worry about it." Before he turns to go, he sees the woman in black step forward to speak. "Well, if that's all, then I need to head out. I have to carry about my business. Have a blonde idiot of an apprentice to find." Jiraiya's eyes enlarge at the sight as he turns to face the woman. This woman in front of him is the most exotic beauty he has ever seen, proudly maintaining her position while projecting an air of wisdom and refusing to take crap from anyone. But if he wants to flirt with her, he can skip that last one. He clears his throat, then looks at the black-haired beauty with a charming expression. His right hand cupped his chin while his left rested on his hip. He arched an eyebrow at her, trying to win her over. "Yes, is there something you'd like to say?" It's a ridiculous attempt to charm her by putting her arms under her bust, which the woman is unaware of. After saying, "Yes, I have a question if I may," you get a nod and a comment about how a gentleman is always listening to a woman, or something similar. That final technique that you had used, I've seen it before if I recall correctly. It is called the Rasengan, she asks the white-haired man. Jiraiya immediately puts any efforts to win her over on hold and returns to his professional demeanor. Of course, if you include everyone who is capable of using the technique, there are 4. Yes, that was as a technique called the Rasengan. However, I'd like to ask you a question now. There are only 3 people who know how to use that technique. One is my apprentice, and the other is not among the living. He is the third, followed by the idiot apprentice who is lost in this dimension. The second is not in this dimension, and the first is no longer among the living. Where have you heard or seen this technique? She carries on the conversation despite his abrupt shift in attitude. Someone we met was able to perform the technique, however he claimed to have not been from this world. Seeing you know the same technique, are you from this world or another? I knew I should have been harder on subtlety with the idiot. Jiraiya sighs in her head. He is claiming to be from another dimension while prancing around in a dimension he has no idea about. Idiot. He nods slowly and says, "Yes, I am." He observes that the woman's group is now looking at him more intently and inquisitively. "I assume the person you met has blonde hair, blue eyes, 3 whisker marks on both of his cheeks, and is an idiot?" "Naruto?" he asks, tilting his head in the direction of the white-clad woman and nodding. She receives another nod in response to her question. "You've just described him, and you said you're searching for your apprentice. Does that mean he's your pupil? Perhaps we should stay a night at the inn. I believe there are some changes that you should know that occurred to Naruto." Modifications. The devil, was there something wrong with the seal's genetics? If that had occurred, how could they have even known his appearance before he came here? Did he change during their meeting? Then? You're not even here, and it's giving me a migraine, damn you. What changes are you talking about? With a peculiar accent, the orange-haired man said to Jiraiya, "Perhaps we should go inside the inn to continue our conversation, y'all." His accent makes him think of the elemental nations, where there were more civilians living close to the ocean. "The owner of the inn is inside. I'm sure there is a room available for you tonight, y'all." Jiraiya looks back toward the group and sighs slightly as he turns his head toward the vicinity of the inn. Naruto will be further away from me as a result, but knowledge is invaluable in this situation. Additionally, I need to know what he has changed. He nods his head at the group, changing his posture to one of friendliness. Jiraiya rubs the back of his head and smiles sheepishly, saying, "All right, then let's go inside to continue our conversation. Sorry, but I forgot to introduce myself. Maybe I should postpone my dancing." He nods to himself in his head as he continues his introduction. "I don't think I have enough reputation for it to be successful, and I doubt they'd want to talk to me further afterwards. I am Jiraiya, the Toad Hermit." First among the group, the man in red introduces himself to Jiraiya. "Orin." He nods in agreement and turns to face the adolescent girl. As she makes some ridiculous jokes about the hermit, Jiraiya waves her away, saying, "I am Summoner Yuna." He told the young woman that he preferred to skip the formalities. The orange-haired man next to him, Waka, gives him the thumbs up as he turns his head in the opposite direction. "Waka. Yeah." Beside him, Jiraiya spots a male teenager. He waves his hand in his direction while grinning broadly. Titus gestures with his thumb behind him and says, "Heya, I'm Titus." Jiraiya nods, remembering that he didn't hear the blue beast speak during the entire conversation. That's Kamari. He doesn't talk much. Finally, he spots the exotic woman to the right of the group under her ample bust. She embraced herself with her arms with his chin cupped. He mysteriously glides toward the woman, slipping into his charming mood as Yuna repeatedly glances between everyone in the room. A slight flush on her face. Titus in the background cat whistles. "May I trouble one beauty such as yourself, for your humble name?" The beauty's body features do not change in response to the man's advances, even though she tilts her head slightly to the side. A horrifying grin appears at the corner of her glossy violet lips as she says, "My name is Lulu." A little amused by the man's fruitless efforts to win her over, but maybe she'd better stop his attempts before they start. If Naruto's teacher is actually a man from another dimension, then, instead of engaging in childish games, both parties must be attentive to their conversation. Your attempts to charm will be futile. It would be best to place such games aside while we converse. Titus ouches from Lulu's shutout, and Waka winches with a low-pitched whistle, though she understands what transpired between the two elders. Yuna is still a little perplexed. Jiraiya was a man who had been crushed by Lulu with a worried expression on her face. Yuna turns to face him. Jiraiya stands with his arms folded across his chest, grinning. However, if you could peek inside his head, you would see a sobbing chibi Jiraiya cultivating mushrooms in a shadowy corner of all my failed attempts. This one hurts. It must have been one of the most vicious. You are right, we should put such games aside while we converse. Just don't assume I have given up with that. You'll find I am more resilient than that. Perhaps second only to Tsunade because of her near-death beatings. Ignoring his smug expression, Lulu utters a little HMPH and says, "So be it then, let us be on our way inside now." The black-haired beauty aloofly turns her shoulder to the man who is approaching and walks toward the inn before the others. Orin, Yuna, Kamari, and Waka follow Lulu, while Titus remains with Jiraiya. Titus has a big smile on his face as he stands next to Jiraiya. Jiraiya looks at the blonde teenager, wondering what the child wants. "Sorry kid, but I don't swing that way if you know what I mean, so mind the distance a bit." Titus smirks as he pats Jiraiya on the shoulder and growls back at him, saying, "Here I was going to offer some comfort to a man whose heart was broken. So much for offering some help. She didn't let you down, she crushed you. Man, I feel sorry for you. What on earth does this child think he is? Am I being crushed? Jiraiya the super pervert." He swats Titus's hand away, irritated, and gestures with his arm. "Listen, kid, I don't know who you're kidding, but Jiraiya doesn't get crushed that easy, my boy. Oh no, it's going to take a lot more than that to bring down this man." He grins smugly as he stands with his chest out and turns to face the dirty blonde teenager. "Besides, I shall the looks you were giving that brown-haired beauty. Her name was Yuna if I recall. Correct? Tried to make a move on her, have you?" He gestures toward the adult male and exclaims, "What? No way. Yuna is different from the others. Besides, I don't go around openly flirting with women like some pervert. Besides, you're like twice her age. You could possibly pass as her father or something," he says. His smug smile never goes away, even when he straightens his back. As two clouds of smoke emerge from his nose, Jiraiya points toward the sky and says, "Exactly, my boy. One's ages doesn't matter when it comes to love. All that matters is the looks." He turns back to Titus and carries on with his absurd tirade. "Let me tell you," he says, "that Lulu girl looks amazing. What a goddess she was. Pure snow skin, lustrous violet lips, and piercing red eyes." In a flash, blood pours from his nose while the pervert furiously scrawls in a brand new book with a perp cover. If that kid was more energetic, wasn't a bit of a pervert himself, and was more of an idiot, I think he could easily pass as Naruto. Jiraiya sighs and heads toward the inn, saying, "God forbid we don't need another Naruto running around. One is enough to make my white hair go gray." Titus frowns at the open pervert. He kicks a pebble on the ground and mumbles about old fart perverts as he storms off inside the inn. Mushroom Rock. With a crushing sound that reverberates for everyone to hear, ocean blue water meets white sand beach. Two teenagers are still staring into each other's eyes, blue in its purest form intertwining with a lifeless, dull red. Naruto and Pain are still, their gazes never leaving each other. After a moment, Pain's body drops and her gaze breaks off to the side. "Even though you look different," she says. She puts on a deadpan smile and turns to face Naruto. "Those whiskers on your cheek prove you're Naruto. How are you?" Even though he knows that the disgusting smile he saw every day in the mirror before he was able to meet Iruka is fake, Naruto is a kind-hearted person. He doesn't like seeing people hurt in any way, even if they are the enemy. He doesn't know where he learned it from. His past was a terrible experience. How did he end up being a kind-hearted person? People always call him the dead last, the idiot, and the know-nothing person, but he was always gifted in understanding people, and he was able to read them with little difficulty than the others. Naruto interrupts his thoughts as his lips form a reassuring smile that is neither goofy nor joyful. "I'm doing well," he says. "As you can see, I've changed a little." He laughs softly, trying to shine some light into her eyes. "I can tell, but to be honest, I much prefer you in your orange outfit," Pain says, directing her attention to an intriguing rock with a variety of brown hues. "Solid black, in my opinion, doesn't go well with you." She twists her neck and casts a repulsive fake smile back at the blonde. "I understand, correct? This color is so much worse than orange. Everyone tells me things like, 'No, you shouldn't wear orange. Orange doesn't make a good ninja,' or 'Orange is a stupid color.' Even though orange is the best color ever, orange isn't all that horrible. It's fantastic." Pain, who chuckles at the blonde-haired ninja, is shocked by Naruto's sudden, enthusiastic tirade. As Naruto's rants and gestures fill the space behind his figure, Pain clearly hears the sounds of another female laughing toward him. She leans on the rock to her side and sees the female laughing, her fiery red hair demanding attention as she throws her first glances before revealing her red and black attire. Out of the corner of her eye, she sees Naruto staring at her, and then he turns to face the woman farther behind him. He calls out to the fiery redhead because she can't hear her name because she's in a slight trance. Pain straightens her back as the two companions argue, and she giggles softly to herself as she sees the redhead win. Naruto sighs deeply. He points to the fiery redhead next to him while hunching his back slightly in a lazy manner. "This is my friend, Amberly Dinch." He straightens his back and smiles, then points his hand toward Pain. "Idiot, this is my friend, Pain." Pain immediately attacks his arm after Amber gives him a hard slap as he nurses his arm. He observes that she is obligingly staring at Pain, who is grinning. "Hey, nice to meet ya," says Amber, waving her hand at the woman on the rock. "I'm Amberly Dinch, as the idiot stated, but I'd rather you just call me Amber." She coos with a toothy smile while Naruto keeps nursing his aching arm. She lets out another quiet laugh as she watches the two friends' antics, smiling ever so slightly, her crimson eyes glimmering with a tiny glimmer of life. "It's a pleasure, Amber," as Naruto said. "My name is Pain. You two must be traveling together, am I right?" "Yes. The fool would be lost in this vast, terrifying world without me." Amber gives Naruto a firm back pat and says, "I have to watch the child." Even though they argue a lot, Pain notices that they are enjoying each other's company and smiles a little every time the two teenagers argue. Pain chooses to let them both enjoy themselves as she swirls on the rock, gazing out into the setting sun, where orange interwind and yellow radiate far off from the horizon, emitting a beautiful scenery. Pain is lost in a trance to such a beautiful scenery as Naruto and Amber approach the tranced female at both her sides. With a cool breeze blowing through the three teenagers, Amber breaks the silence with a gentle voice. "It's beautiful." Amber looks in wonder as the radiance of lights reflects off her light hazel eyes. Even though Amber can't see him, he nods in response and speaks in a voice that is just a little bit above a whisper while looking into the sunset. "Isn't it? I've witnessed a lot of sunsets, but none are ever the same. And tomorrow this place will be drenched with blood." Both Amber and Naruto tense up, snapping their necks in Pain's direction. "What are you talking about? Why would there be blood all over this place? What will take place tomorrow?" Amber doesn't say anything as Naruto repeatedly questions Pain. Unable to tear their gaze away from the exotic horizon, dull red eyes gaze into the setting sun. "Tomorrow there is going to be a meaningless slaughter. The Crusaders and Albaid have made the decision to band together in an effort to combat sin. Sin will undoubtedly kill them all, despite their noble intentions, but the Maesters do nothing about it." "Not at all. I can understand what you mean about their goal, but are they really going to try to defeat sin?" The flamboyant red-haired teenager exclaims. "Will they be utilizing Machina? They couldn't possibly win. How could the Maesters permit such a thing at all? That isn't possible." Pain flexes her legs close to her body as she swirls off the rock with a little leap, and Naruto stays silent throughout the conversation, unsure of what his friends are talking about. "It's getting late," she says. "If neither of you has a place to sleep, I managed to locate a small cove that is separate from the other Crusaders. There is a lot of space because my roommates have been gone for a while." "All right, but we're going to continue this conversation when we get there," says Amber, grunting in approval as she crosses her arms over her chest. Pain gestures her head in agreement as she leaves in front of the red-headed and blonde teenagers, saying, "I don't like this. Naruto?" Amber grunts to no one in particular. "I don't know about you, but before we move forward, I want to know what's wrong tomorrow morning. You can continue without me, but I'll probably stay to see what the Maesters are thinking." I don't really know what a maester is, Naruto says. Leaning back and gazing up into the dark red sky with his hands behind his head, Naruto gives Amber a nice guy pose and lowers his hands while thrusting out his right thumb, saying, just that they are supposedly some big shot noble people in a religion or something. Don't worry about it. If you do, I'll try my hardest to prevent another catastrophe like Kilika if there is indeed going to be a conflict with Sin. Amber smiles gratefully as she tilts her head to her left, and Naruto smiles back before turning to face the ground with a raspberry expression. You can't leave an idiot alone anyhow, he says. Naruto tenses up, bracing himself for a slap on his arm that never materialized, but when he looks back up, he sees Amber staring at him with a blank expression. You never know what kind of trouble she'd get into. You're correct, an idiot cannot be left on her own so they can watch each other. You need another fool with her. An idiot and a genius don't get along, but they can better understand one another when they are with another idiot. Naruto smiles brightly, and Amber smiles back at him. Great. Now Pain might be angry at us for keeping her waiting, Amber says, letting out a little sigh, but her smile never goes away. Let's move quickly, fool. As he nods toward the fair-eyed girl, he sees her turn around and follow Pain. Naruto looks back at her and follows Amber, his smile never leaving his lips. Sure thing, idiot. Hey, idiot. Looking into Amber's eyes, Naruto tilts his head to the side and says, yay. Thanks. Even though she can't see his figure, he nods and widens his smile. Anytime. The blonde stops and turns his upper body to face the moon, which is now dark. His blue eyes stare into the moon as it rises into the sky, and he thinks, the moon is going to be a good distance away at its pace. He sees the moon reflecting light onto the earth, glowing a dull yellow in the star-filled sky, and he loses himself in a trance as the moon reflects in his eyes, blue blending with the dull yellow light. Hey, fool. Come on. He smiles and turns to face Amber, who is smiling and waving at him. Ah, I'm sorry about that, he says. Naruto looks shocked before he bursts into a booming laugh. Amber stops waving and raises an eyebrow. Ah ha ha, sorry, but ah ha ha, I just remember something my squad leader would do every time he was late. Naruto keeps snickering as he approaches Amber, who keeps staring at him. Haha. Perhaps that's why he says he gets lost on the road of life. Perhaps he doesn't gaze at the moon, but at something else. I'll have to ask him when I get back. The bright yellow moon in the night sky is radiating against their backs, but if an astronomer were to look into the star-filled sky, he would see the Cetus constellation engulfing neighboring stars. Amber shrugs as the two teenagers continue on their path and see Pain waiting for them while tapping her foot. They both smile sheepishly as they approach the gray-haired teenager. Hi, rode in me in. All right. You're trying to tell me that you were all at Luca's Blitzball Stadium. A large swarm of fiends caused widespread chaos for all of the civilians, but what's most strange is how they managed to get in undetected in such a big swarm. However, prior to the battle, everyone was divided into groups, but during mid-fight, everyone except Naruto and Orin. Waka nods in agreement with Jiraiya's unasked question, were able to come together. However, Jiraiya gestures toward Yuna and says, you were ambushed by fiends, and everyone was preoccupied to give assistance during that battle. Yuna's face droops as she remembers the fight in Luca Stadium. Well, Lulu was able to destroy one of them, but I wasn't strong enough to defend myself. The light-haired teen gently holds the garments on her chest with a disillusioned look. Jiraiya looks at her and then shrugs. Yay, probably, but you know what? Yuna looks curiously at Jiraiya and snaps her head in her direction. Get over it. Get stronger. If you weren't already strong enough, it will happen again. So don't whine about it. That's what I would advise you to do. Yuna looks at Jiraiya bewildered, as she had anticipated something more calming. After receiving a nod from Lulu, Jiraiya leans back in his chair and crosses his arms in front of his chest. However, Naruto was able to arrive at your most time of need and use the Rasengan to destroy the fiend. I fully understand that part. But the next piece of information is confusing. Jiraiya turns to face Waka, the orange-haired man, and says, it's clear that the daggers he was given to fight with caused his transformation. Naruto received those daggers from you. Were you aware of them, by chance? He answers the white-haired ninja by gesturing his head no, saying, no, I have no idea what they are. They were discovered by Chappu. My brother Chappu. He's no longer with us, Waka says, rubbing the back of his neck as Jiraiya inquires about asking Chappu for information. I don't know where he got them, or what they are, yeah. Well, this just got more complicated. First, it would seem the fourth seal is still intact and functioning, though I'm not sure how long it has been that way. Second, it would appear those dagger weapons have caused a change in Naruto, but the person who knows about them is no longer among us. Damn, going to have to do this the old-fashioned way and actually do research, Jiraiya says, closing his eyes and lowering his head slightly toward his chest and thinking. Jiraiya's train of thought is interrupted by the sound of someone moving from their position as he glances over languidly. Waka yawns slightly and stretches onto his feet, saying, "Well, I don't know about you guys, but I'm gonna head to my room to sleep." Yaw. Waka's yawn is followed by a similar reaction from few other members of their group. "Yeah, that battle earlier really wiped me out," Titus says, nodding toward Waka, who is extending his arms behind his head. With his right hand stroking the back of his unclean blonde hair and his left hand resting on his hip, Titus says, "Hey, whose room am I sleeping in? Waka's?" After Lulu nods, he sighs deeply and says, "All right, man, please stop snoring so loudly." After arguing with the teenager, Waka follows Titus as they head toward their room to sleep, warning that if you do, no one will be able to sleep. Oren takes a few steps forward toward the hallway, leaning against a nearby wall, and Jiraiya observes that the blue beast of a man has left the room. "I myself need to rest," he says. He nods toward Jiraiya and gets one in return before vanishing into the hallway. "I'll be in my room if anyone needs me." As she stands up, Lulu slowly pushes her chair back and touches her hair, which makes gentle bell-like noises. It seems like everyone has gone to bed. Lulu looks at Yuna tenderly and says, "Maybe it's time for us to get some rest too. I also want to join them in having a good night's sleep. Will you come with me to our room?" Yuna's gentle expression lingers at Lulu's gentle gaze before she turns to face Jiraiya, who raises an eyebrow in response. "I'll join you in a moment," she says. "If it's feasible, I would like to speak with Sir Jiraiya." Jiraiya looks at the young girl and wonders how he got the title of Sir. He doesn't like it. He's already old and doesn't need a title like Sir that makes him feel even older. Yuna shifts uneasily from the stare as Lulu looks at her in silence. "Very well, avoid staying up too late. I'll be waiting for you in our room before I go to bed." After Yuna nods, Lulu turns to face the white-haired man and says, "Good night." Jiraiya nods his head in her direction as she enters the hallway for the night. "We will need plenty of rest for our travels tomorrow." Jiraiya looks at Yuna and sighs slightly. "Well, what did you want to discuss?" "You're too young for me. Even though I know I'm gorgeous, maybe we'll talk in a few more years." Jiraiya smiles pervertedly at Yuna, who is mentally perfecting her older self. Jiraiya laughs as Yuna stutters and then shakes her head rapidly while uttering absurdities. "I am just making fun of you." Jiraiya says, "Don't worry too much about it. Let's get down to business. What specifically did you want to discuss with me?" Jiraiya paces over to lean on a nearby wall while Yuna settles into her seat. "I take it that you were Naruto's teacher? I take it that you know a lot about him?" "Well, we didn't mention it, but when we were leaving Luca I had to make a choice." Yuna fidgets in her seat, placing a finger near her chin and looking down at her lap. Jiraiya nods toward her and raises an eyebrow at her, mumbling out a, "Uh-huh." Jiraiya sighs inwardly at her evasiveness, thinking, "Well, I had to choose if I made Naruto my guardian, or Sir Oren." He thinks, "This girl is very similar to the older Hyuga heiress sibling. I'm afraid I might have offended Naruto by not being able to make a decision, but I now want him to be my guardian. However, I'm not sure if he would even want to be my friend." The young teen looks at Jiraiya in confusion as he laughs softly and waves his hand dismissively at the woman with the light brown hair sitting in her seat, saying, "You shouldn't worry yourself about it anymore. I have known him for the fourth longest period of time in his life out of all the people he knows. I can say with certainty that he has no ill will toward you whatsoever." Jiraiya gives the young lady a small smile and says, "He has never harbored resentment toward anyone." Jiraiya visualizes Orochimaru and his menacing grin. "Well, only one person." "You really think he doesn't hold a grudge against me, or hate me?" Yuna asks, her eyes searching Jiraiya. She speaks softly and timidly, as though a single unfavorable word would break her heart. "Believe me, that brat could never harbor resentment toward you. He can't hold anything against you because of how nice you are anyhow. Why are you asking?" Grown attached to the knucklehead? Jiraiya smirks, leaning forward and continuously arching his brow upward and downward at the woman. As she shakes her head in denial, Yuna maintains a very visible flush on her face. "And no, he is simply a friend of mine, and I don't want to hurt him in any way. I don't want to lose the few friends I do have because I don't have many." "Naruto will not hate you, nor will he no longer want to be your friend," Jiraiya says with a smile as he looks up toward the ceiling, as if it were non-existent, and into the night sky. "Having known him for 3 years, I can say with certainty that he would readily sacrifice himself to keep you safe. He is that kind of person. He can no longer bring himself to harbor resentment. He's probably already forgotten about it and is looking into the moon somewhere." Yuna smiles with relief, trusting Jiraiya's words, but she's secretly ecstatic that he wouldn't hold anything against her. She remembers some of his words and gives him a little curious blink. "You mentioned that you're the fourth person who's known him the longest, right? But you mentioned that you've only known him for 3 years, she adds, getting a nod. "I'm not entirely sure I understand. Wouldn't there be those who have known him all of their lives?" Before she can apologize, Jiraiya says, in normal cases you would be right, but Naruto is a special case from where we are from. Yuna shudders slightly in response to Jiraiya's stiffening and his shoulders sagging. With a distant look in his eyes, she soon begins to regret asking the question. He had no friends as he grew older and was born an orphan without knowing who his parents were. However, the person who knew him the longest was old man Sarutobi Iruka, his academy teacher, came in third, followed by the Ichiruka Shack people. Even though I have only spent about 3 years with Naruto, you would never think he was an orphan with his smiling happy features. Always cheering and laughing, Yuna says, her eyes lowering at the idea. Even though our time together wasn't the longest, I spent most of it every day. So trust in me when I say, he holds no grudge toward you whatsoever. Jiraiya smiles softly at Yuna, recalling his previous perverted smiles or grins. I was with him every day and got to know who he truly is. With a smile on his face, Jiraiya gently ruffles her hair with his hand as he paces toward Yuna, who is standing next to her. So, stop worrying about it. Yuna twitches in her chair as Jiraiya ruffles her hair, and she feels his firm hand pull away from her head as she looks up at the elder. It is late, we should be going to bed, she says. Particularly you. I don't want to start arguing with that Lulu fan because they keep you up at night. What was that person eavesdropping for? Wanting to make sure I didn't try anything with this girl, or what? Oh, well, doesn't seem like they will cause any trouble. Jiraiya looks toward the hallway, his face going slightly blank, only maintaining a smile to prevent Yuna from questioning him. Let's get some sleep, he says, stepping back from Yuna to give her space. However, I'm not sure which room I'm staying in. May I ask you to show me my room? She gets up and enthusiastically nods to Jiraiya, saying, I would be honored. Your room is 2 doors down from ours, so it is not too much trouble. Yuna leads Jiraiya into the hallway while giggling softly. That is the room you will spending the night in, she says, pointing to the door 2 doors down from Lulu's and her own. There is no key since they are always unlocked unless you lock from the inside, so do not worry about one. Both of them nod, and they head to their respective rooms for sleep. Well, this isn't as bad as it could be, I suppose. Could have been a far worse dimension with no humans. At least Naruto met some decent people when he arrived. Who knows if he would have survived. Jiraiya shuts the door quickly and locks it as well. He sighs and jumps onto the bed onto his back, using his fingers as a pillow behind his head. Jiraiya looks into the ceiling with a concentrated face. Tsunade will have my head, so you had better be healthy after all. She isn't the only one who misses you. Jiraiya closes his eyes and falls asleep, his light breathing taking over the room. Mushroom Rock. The sound of sizzling reverberates throughout the coven of rocks as a fire consumes a small campfire. 3 teenagers gather around the fire to finish their last meal, and a fiery redhead and bright blonde emit resonant happy sighs. The fire roaring inside the cave during the night reflects the blonde's hair a darker shade of orange, while the fiery redhead's hair is a dark crimson red. Both of them toss their disposable plates into the fire, and their gazes move to the third person gathered around the fire. Well, we have a little time before we need to rest for the night, so I can answer a few questions if I'm able, and if I also have the right to not answer if I do not want to, she says, repositioning herself to a more comfortable position. She throws her now empty disposable plate into the engulfing fire at a slower pace, her gray hair clashing with the fire, turning it a shade of dull brown in the night-filled sky. As the fire dances in her eyes for everyone to see, Amber nods her head in agreement. Could you please elaborate on what's going on tomorrow? Al-Baid and the Crusaders will fight against Sin. Based on what you have said thus far, personally, I think that's really— Amber turns to face the blonde, who looks back at her with innocent curiosity. She turns back to face Pain, her face expressionless, and says, stupid. That is pretty much correct, Naruto says, frowning at the subtle jab but allowing it to go unnoticed because he wants Pain to explain. Do not misunderstand me. I see Al-Baid and the Crusaders coming together and working toward a common objective. Amber leans forward to ask Pain a question, but she gestures with her hand before she does. Allow me to elaborate on the situation as best as I know of, Amber says. But I strongly disagree with their method. According to rumors circulating the camp, the Al-Baid will provide the Crusaders with Machina, which they will use to fight Sin. Amber leans forward and puts her hands on her knees, saying, that's ridiculous. There have been numerous conflicts against Sin, with or without Machina, but I am not one to adhere strictly to Yevon's teachings. For those who opposed it, they have all resulted in death. They know that, don't they? How come the Maesters would permit it at all? It is evident that they have a powerful machine and a plan. They won't just barge in against Sin because they know that, I bet. Amber huffs back in annoyance as Pain nods toward Naruto, who had been silent during their conversation from the start. You are right, Naruto, Pain says. To simply hurry them to death would be nonsensical. But their approach is a blatant failure to begin with. They intend to entice Sin here by gathering Sin's spawns in one location. Pain ignores Amber's exclamation of, "What? This is a recipe for disaster because they will probably be able to escape their hold once they form together." Second, the Crusaders intend to fight the smaller Sin spawns that are found near the beach once more. Disaster is written all over this. Large cliffs can be seen directly along the coast. If you look at the coastal area, Sin is big, and he has power all over. There will undoubtedly be a lot of rock slides. As he listens to Pain's explanation of every detail, Naruto clenches his jaw. He can follow the main points of the Crusaders' battle along the coast, but he has a vague notion of the Sin spawns, assuming they are similar to the one he faced in Kilika. The one after the jungle, of course. He observes Pain pause briefly before she speaks, and he says, "Thirdly, I do not really have a clue to what it is. I only know that the Albaid intend to make use of a sizable machina that they constructed on a slender cliff that overlooks the beach. Given that this will be causing the greatest harm to Sin, do I really need to go into further detail about its flaws? It should go without saying, in my opinion. Of course that would be a horrible idea. A large machine must weigh heavily on a cliff hanging over the beach. No doubt they will use it to draw Sin's attention with its weight. I have little doubt some force from Sin could cause a collapse." Both teenagers nod toward Pain, leaning back slightly. "I don't know much about this place, but if what you say is true, then we will have to do what we can to stop them," he says. Sighing, Amber nods in agreement as Pain dismissively waves her hand, saying, "We can't allow this much blood to be shed needlessly. There is no point in attempting to stop them. They have made an effort, and they simply won't give up. They are being further propelled by the support of the Maesters. Attempting to stop them is futile. Additionally, it is too late to try because the battle is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon or early evening." Pain notices the sparkle in Naruto's eyes as she sighs, giving her a glimpse of his thoughts. "Do not bother trying to talk the Maesters to stop them," she says. "They will simply spew out nonsense and ignore your warnings, so much so as to say, turning a blind eye. Never in hell. I truly do not adhere to Yevon's teachings, as I have stated, but why in the world would they allow the Crusaders and Albaid to do this? Instead of encouraging them to kill themselves, wouldn't they try to prevent it? There is something fishy going on," Amber says, fidgeting as her hand frantically moves upward and downward while maintaining a tight grip on her knee. Pain gives the hazel-eyed woman a solemn nod. "I know what you mean because of what has happened recently. I am not as much of a Yevon follower anymore, but there is something going on underneath it all. There is nothing we can do about it," Pain says, gazing up into the starry sky. "Maesters should be against this action, but they turn blind eyes and encourage it. The operation starts tomorrow, and everything is already finished. We really can't." The group's two female members yell at Naruto, who is grinning with stoned eyes. "Like hell, there is nothing we can do about it." Naruto smiles broadly as he looks at Pain, saying, "There are only 3 major forces opposing Sin, right? We may not be able to stop them, but that doesn't mean we can stop as many deaths as possible." Receiving a nod, he looks into the fire as it roars within his blue eyes, echoing with the roar of a lion's might, demanding to be set free into the night. "There is 3 of us, right?" he continues after getting a nod from both women and a big smile from Amber. "That pervert did not instill some tactics in my thick skull for nothing, even though I may not be intelligent. Though it's not much of a plan, I might know how to lessen the amount of violence that occurs tomorrow if you two are open to hearing my side of the story. That is, we can come up with something else if you two don't like it." Amber and Pain look at each other, their eyes meeting, and they nod as they turn to face Naruto, one grinning broadly and the other grinning slightly in amusement. An hour or so goes by as Naruto, Amber, and Pain discuss their small plan for the operation tomorrow. When Amber heard Naruto's plan, she laughed, thinking it was exactly like him from the short time she had known him. Pain finds the plan simple, with nothing that would really change the operation or the outcome. Though she did show a hint of amusement, it wasn't as big as Amber's, but she doesn't want Amber's position because she feels her mindset isn't there. Pain looks at Naruto and he looks back at her, blinking. "What are you going to do, Naruto?" Naruto smiles as he stands near his feet, gazing up at the night sky, his eyes reflecting light from the stars and moon. "You have not explained what you are going to be doing in our plan," Amber says, blinking as she nods toward Naruto, curious about his role. If he knew the sky, he would have noticed that the Perseus constellation is the brightest of all the stars in the dark sky. It appears as though it is charging toward the Cetus constellation, which is consuming its neighboring stars. Naruto smiles as his gaze focuses on the powerful fire in the middle of the 3 teenagers. His smirk turns into a big smile as his eyes show determination with the fire's might. "I'm going to personally introduce Sin to an old friend of mine that has been wanting to see me." Early morning in Konoha. As I mentioned earlier, Two women with blonde hair stand among the trees in the village of Konoha. The older of the two is staring at Ino with a sadistic smirk that makes the younger one shiver. Tsunade looks at Ino. While her smirk widens, there will be a significant increase in your training. This instruction will accomplish two goals: either you will break or you will grow exponentially. Tsunade nods, acknowledging Ino's resolve in her eyes. She says, "We shall start with the basics again, but this time we shall skip level 1, and head directly into level 3. Ino shudders at what she has gotten herself into, but she will persevere because she needs to strengthen herself for her friends and family. You've probably seen this exercise before. As she looks at Tsunade, she sees 3 times as many round objects as she did in her first training exercise, but she also notices another stack that is taller than Tsunade. It is used to force your body to adapt and dodge with instinct, Ino says, nodding as she recalls this training with horror. Compared to the first level, this one is much more brutal. I'll give you one final choice. You can choose not to participate in this training. Tsunade's eyes narrow slightly as she says, "If you proceed, I shall not be held responsible for any fatal injuries you shall receive." The woman has platinum blonde hair. Glaring at the busty blonde, she swallows a wad of air in her throat and says, "I don't care if your training leaves me beaten and maimed. I'm going to persevere and get stronger so that I can support my friends when they need it. If I ever again cause trouble for my friends or my team, I will be damned." Tsunade fixes her attention on the young blonde, examining her features for any indications of flaws. When she finds none, she nods in the direction of the young lady. "Very well," she says, "this training is identical to the first one. I'm firing these objects at you, and you have to avoid them. All training will start over if you are even nicked by one. However, this section necessitates assistance from another for the challenging, which I've found the ideal companion to assist me with." Perspiration trickles down Ino's cheek as she wonders who her partner is. Surely it must be some of the most cruel to assist in such cruel methods, but who? Ino sees Tsunade turn her head and look down at her left leg. She follows her gaze, and her eyes widen before she lets out a "aw" at one of the cutest sights she has ever seen. Tun is standing close to Tsunade's left foot, but her outfit, which consists of a white martial arts uniform with a white headband wrapped around her head, that makes her even cuter. "Do not get too affectionate with Tun." Tsunade smirks, her eyes twinkling dangerously as Tun lets out a oink that only makes Ino coo at her. With a clap, she turns back to face Tsunade. "After this day is over, you will despise her and loathe her existence." Ino wonders how she could hate such a cute creature. Tun is one of the most gentle animals she has ever encountered, though she hasn't seen many in general. "Would you mind taking a position to start, dear?" Tun a nod and a oink are given, and Tun darts over to the enormous stack of rounded objects. "Ino, I will warn you once and only once." She nods toward Tun as the pig throws one of the objects with her snout toward Tsunade. Tsunade quickly smacks the object with all of her strength toward Ino, avoiding the object with all of her strength as it whizzes past her head. She feels a tingling liquid ooze down her cheek, and when she places the tips of her fingers, she realizes it's her blood, but the object didn't even touch her. Her eyes widen as she turns toward a large echoing boom behind her. But the boom was the least of her concerns. Many of the trees in a row had a large complete circle in their trunks, indicating the object plow through with little resistance. Shall not hold any of my strength." Tsunade quickly punts one of the objects in front of her as Tun throws her another object. "Lose focus and lose your life." Ino turns back toward Tsunade as perspiration starts to pour from her body and scalp, wondering if she will live to eat lunch for the day. Yes, it will be a long day. After saying that, Ino starts torturing herself to improve her abilities while simultaneously questioning whether she will survive. Morning at Mii and Highroads. In the white-haired man, defending his eyes from the invading sun, stretches in his bed before sitting up. He yawns and pops the kinks out of his joints with a grunt, suggesting that he may be getting a little older. Not much, but a little. He hops up to his feet and stretches again to loosen his muscles. Not his joints, no. He is not old enough to need to stretch out his joints more than once. At least that is what he tells himself. The knock is heard as he approaches his door to welcome his first visitor in the morning. A woman with light brown hair toward her shoulders, different colored eyes, and a charming smile greets him as he opens the door. "Good morning, Jiraiya. I sincerely hope I didn't wake you up if you were asleep." Jiraiya rubs the back of his head and shakes his head wearily. "Good morning, and no, don't worry about it. No damage was done because I had just woken up when you knocked. What would a beautiful woman like you want to do with me in the morning?" Yuna puts her hands behind her back and rocks joyfully as she says, "We were going to have breakfast, and I was wondering if you would like to accompany us to breakfast." Yuna smiles sweetly at his compliment, wondering if this is what it would feel like to have an uncle. Even though she has never really met him and is unsure of how he would treat her, you shouldn't have felt excluded. With a faint smile, Jiraiya says, This girl is way too kind for her own good. It's a good thing she was born in this dimension and not ours. If she had been born in ours, she probably would not have been this kind and would have been killed or worse, captured by some thugs. He nods toward the woman, crushing his thoughts. Yeah, thanks, I'd be delighted to accept your offer. Furthermore, if I can't feed myself, how can I say no? Yuna giggles softly at his little joke, and Jiraiya laughs to himself. Should we leave now? Jiraiya points up at Yuna and says, will you give me a moment? I just woke up, so I need to freshen up a little, brush my teeth and wash my face. Unless morning breath at the table doesn't bother you. Jiraiya chuckles again as she begins spouting nonsense, unknowing what to say. She doesn't want to come off rude, but she does not want to smell morning breath. Reaching out, he ruffles the woman's hair with his hand. Hey, don't get so worked up about it. I was merely making fun of you. However, give me a moment. Jiraiya nods and silently shuts his door before entering his tiny bathroom. I guess I really am getting old when that girl is near. I am unable to act like my normal self. Makes me wonder if I had settled down and had a girl, would she have turned out like her? I probably am old enough to be her father, probably grandfather or something. Grunting, Jiraiya pours water into the sink and stares into the clear liquid, his reflection staring back at him. What the hell am I thinking about? He asks, splattering the water in his hands. Jiraiya quickly cleans his teeth and then rinses with water. He sighs and runs his fingertips through his white hair before heading toward the door of the room, where he discovers Yuna smiling and patiently waiting. Rocking on her feet, Jiraiya nods toward the young woman and closes his door with a faint smile. Yuna and Jiraiya pace the hallway in silence before meeting with the rest of her group for breakfast. Upon entering the dining area, Oren leans against a nearby wall and nods toward Jiraiya and Yuna. Kamari stands firmly at attention in a shaded corner, watching Jiraiya's every move. Jiraiya waves with a humorous smile, receiving a cold stare in return. Not a very talkative guy. He holds in a slight chuckle as he looks toward the table, where Waka and Titus fight over what looks like a piece of sausage. Reminds me of Naruto and I. Yuna's worried gaze meets his as he feels a gentle tug at his sleeve. Oh, I'm sorry about that. For a moment, I kind of dozed off. Is there somewhere we can eat and sit? Yuna nods to the tall white-haired man as she points her feminine hands toward two empty chairs at the table. Jiraiya quickly leaps into the chair next to Lulu with his chin resting on his hand, gazing in her direction. Good morning, my lady. This lovely morning. How are you? Lulu keeps eating while ignoring the man who is approaching, and Jiraiya waits passively for a response while the air is silent. Lulu carefully places her food utensil onto her plate, and then, like a good lady, she wipes her mouth clean of any food that has gotten on it with a tablecloth before gently sliding her plate inward toward the table to indicate that she is finished. Good morning, Jiraiya. I'm doing fine, how about you? Before answering, Jiraiya smirks and bites into his breakfast in front of him, chewing and swallowing. I'm doing fine, he says. I assume you slept well last night. He notices Yuna eating her food while her eyes look curiously at the two adults in wonder, and Jiraiya's resting hand twitches slightly on his smaller fingers as he realizes that her comrades are watching their interaction. Yes, I slept well last night. I appreciate you asking, Lulu says, gently pushing her chair away from the table. Pardon me. Jiraiya watches out of the corner of his eye as she swirls around carrying her plates toward the kitchen. I have to take my dish toward the kitchen so it may be washed. She stands up and places her utensils together on top of the plate, emitting soft beads from her movement. Shut out completely, Waka, wouldn't you agree? In an announcer's voice, Titus scoffs. I have to agree, Titus, Waka says, gravely crossing his arms and nodding his head. It was a complete shutout. Yes, it didn't even begin if it didn't start. Can we even call that a shutout? How right you are, Waka, Titus says, nodding thoughtfully in Waka's direction. This would have to be referred to as rejection. As they lean back in their chairs and occasionally pat their hands on their table in amusement, Titus and Waka burst out laughing. Yay, laugh it up while you can, Jiraiya says, gritting his teeth and putting his food in his mouth with a slight frown. Waiting will make you regret it. Titus jerks his head in Jiraiya's direction as his laughter stops, but Waka's still roars with laughter. Jiraiya smirks a little, and Yuna looks at him with a mixture of curiosity and worry. Besides Jiraiya, the Toad Sage doesn't go down that easy, I tell you. She will change her mind, so don't worry, have faith in me. As she finishes her breakfast, Yuna chuckles softly in amusement at the scene, taking her plate in her small hands. Pacing herself, she reaches for Jiraiya's finished plate, but he holds his hand up as he takes hers from her hand. Yuna opens her mouth to object, but Jiraiya stands with both plates, beating her in words. Hey, what kind of gentleman would I be if I let a pretty lady do all the chores? Waka and Titus groan at the older man's remark. Both of them doubt that he would come anywhere near Lulu's affection. That's not a very good one. Perhaps he is the one Naruto gets all of his manners from, Yuna says, tilting her head to the side and smiling sweetly as she watches Jiraiya fade toward the kitchen with their plates. With a triumphant smirk on his lips, Jiraiya glides toward the kitchen. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant, Jiraiya. You have made yourself seem like a true gentleman while you really just wanted an excuse to go into the kitchen. Jiraiya giggles to himself. Now I just need to play off the accidental run-into plot with that Lulu beauty, and I am sure to be in the bag. Jiraiya approaches Lulu in the kitchen as he sets their plates for cleaning. He turns his head in an attempt to charm her, but she is already walking away. Jiraiya smirks toward the black-haired beauty as she sways her hips naturally at her walk, playing hard to get. Makes this all the much better, he says. Jiraiya. He hears a quiet voice behind him, and when he turns slightly, he sees Yuna with her hands clasped together close to her legs, saying, "We're getting ready to depart for our pilgrimage, and we will be leaving shortly. Are you going to be with us?" Jiraiya is pierced by Yuna's multicolored eyes. His hand automatically strokes the back of his head while he has a tiny droop in his lips. About that, Jiraiya signs heavily as Yuna's hand gently clutches her silky cloth dress, her eyelids hanging low with a sorrowful frown on her lips. "Well, I really need to find my apprentice before he gets any further ahead than he is, so I will need to be traveling solo if I am to catch up to him," Jiraiya says. "I see." Yuna's head pops up with a forced smile, and her light brown hair casts shadows over her unique colored eyes. Jiraiya rubs the back of his head again, and there's an awkward pause in the room as he frowns deeply. "Of course. I am so sorry. I had completely forgotten why you had come here. Many people are undoubtedly eager to see Naruto again, including oneself." In the first year of traveling with Naruto, he had witnessed the forced smile on Jiraiya's face numerous times. Whenever the name of Konoha, his village, or his close friends within the village walls were mentioned, he would always plaster that smile on his face and boast that he hoped they were doing well and that he would outtrain them all. I do not miss the brat too much, but I cannot say that for some acquaintances of his. It would be unwise for you to offend her, believe me. He shudders when he recalls Tsunade thrashing Jiraiya toward the edge of death. Jiraiya's faint hint of humor makes Yuna giggle softly with her hollow smile. "If she can frighten you so much," Yuna says. "I guess you should be on your way now," she says softly, giggling at his bizarre facial expressions and his incessant muttering about strong, scary blondes. "Then I will have to meet this unique individual." Her head tilts downward once more, and her giggles fade into nothingness. "Would you not want to be my guardian, I wonder?" As his arms cross over his wide chest, his eyebrows slightly lift. "Guardian? What are you discussing? I doubt that any of you have explained the precise definition of a guardian." "Allow me to explain the duties of a guardian, Yuna." Jiraiya looks toward Lulu, who has already noticed her presence. As Yuna is slightly startled by her voice, "Pack what essentials we have brought," she says, her small lips opening to respond to the white-haired man. But she is interrupted by a soft yet firm feminine voice. "I've completed packing my things. As I explain what a guardian is, please pack your things." Lulu's chest gestures as her laughter teases Yuna from her whining about being older now, and Yuna gives a little huff as she ruffles her hair affectionately. Yuna nods and bows lowly toward Jiraiya before apologizing to the two adults. "She's a good kid?" Lulu gives Jiraiya a small smile before turning to face her. "She is, and I would not trade her for the world." Jiraiya nods in comprehension, grinning a little. "Well, enough of that for now. I believe you were wanting to know what a guardian is, correct?" He puts aside his charming demeanor and starts talking to the attractive woman with black hair. Jiraiya doesn't say anything about information enabling a ninja to win a battle, saying instead, "That is correct. After all, the more information a person has, the more prepared they shall be for the future. After all, the ninja who survives a battle will be the one with more accurate information." Behind her back, Lulu hears shuffling noises. She looked around to get a glimpse of the source of the noises. She observes that her fellow travelers are well prepared as her beads cling with gentle reverberating sounds. Lulu transforms back into the white-haired ninja. "It would appear we are being waited on. Would it be best to continue our conversation upon the road? You would be able to gain some distance while you receive the information you require?" Jiraiya thinks as he cups his chin. He simply adopted this posture to woo the enigmatic woman. Even though he had already made up his mind to carry out that decision, both adults move toward the door leading out of the inn, but they see that everyone except Yuna has left. "Very well, we shall continue this conversation on the road. We should hurry, though no telling where that idiot is." Yuna smiles at them after noticing their mildly perplexed expression. Yuna chuckles naively as she makes fun of the two adults, saying, "Everyone is waiting outside. Come on, you two are so slow." Lulu ruffles Yuna's hair and laughs quietly. Yuna puffs out her cheeks and Lulu responds with a louder laugh. "My, I did not know you could be so rude, lady summoner." Lulu smiles slightly as she walks past Yuna on her way out into the world. When he arrives at the young lady, Jiraiya grins. Jiraiya uses his thumb to point and smirks. Hey, just because my age is creeping up on me does not mean I am slow. I will have you know, I'm one of the most fast ninja you shall ever find. As she waves as she leaves the inn, Yuna bursts out of her tiny pout with a giggle. Jiraiya pouts to himself, his upper body sagging. No one ever believes what I say. Why doesn't anyone take me seriously? He exhales as he steps into the uncharted territory. Mushroom Rock. Dawn. Through smooth-edged rocks, the wind whistles as the sun starts to peek over the horizon. Soft, calming tunes drift through the rocks as the wind grinds against the white sand. The ocean water adds lovely sounds to the melody. What a lovely scene on such a serene morning. Little creatures arousing from their sleep at night running across the white sand beach and along the rocky walls. It's a wonderful day to live. Wake up, idiot. There's a booming sound coming from inside a small coven. Animals scatter into their individual homes from such an erupting shockwave of sound. 3 teenagers can be found in the tiny cove while the third male is tending to a large bruise on his head. 2 female teenagers are fully conscious and awake. His face was glowing with fatigue, which was aided by a deep yawn that resembled a lion. Before speaking, the male's lips smack together as he turns his head toward the female's flaming red head. He easily dodges a flying object aimed at the sun-kissed hair on his head with little to no effort. Ma, did you really have to hit me? You could have just, I don't know, nudged me awake? What do you think I did the first time to wake you up, idiot? Of course I tried to nudge you awake, but no, she yells, gesturing accusingly toward the teenager with the brown hair with her right hand. She has a menacing aura. You had to keep mumbling about 5 more minutes of sleep. She says, her mouth quirked into a smirk of fear. The abrupt shift in her aura makes the male teen shiver a little. You also mumble something along the lines of perverted hermit. Do you have something to say to me, Naruto? Huh? When Naruto sees the dangerous teen, he cowers in terror. He was certain that she had moved closer to him without moving from her position. Fuck it. I have to get rid of that habit immediately. Keep waking me up, stupid pervert. If he hadn't used harsh techniques to wake me up, I wouldn't have developed the habit of discussing him while I was asleep. He gets a shiver down his spine, but it's not because he thinks of his mentor. Oh no, it's the aura of death that pierces his very being. Naruto returns with a slow crab crawl. He was unaware of the fiery redhead's proximity to him. As she gets closer to him, she is screaming with danger. Her eyes were dangerously piercing him like a tsunami hitting a lone rock. The sense of killing intent crushed him. Sweat trickles down his face as the fire-haired teen keeps getting closer and closer, like a coiled snake ready to strike. Now, I didn't mean anything. I said honest. It's a habit I picked up from my teacher when he woke me up, he says. After hiding behind his savior, Naruto clambers to his feet and says, Okay, that is enough, you two. He looks over her shoulder at the lethal teen while pretending to be a terrified child as a gentle sight escapes. Pain turns her shoulder away from Naruto. If you two are done, we need to clean up and get ready for the day. We have many plans for today if we want to be prepared for our operation. Naruto quickly nods his head while still looking at the teenager with the red hair. But do we have to start now? I still want to strike fear into the very depths of his soul. Her eyes widen, and she pouts her lower lip in what many would consider cute fashion, as if she were a child receiving reprimands. Both Naruto and Pain wear expressionless masks as they stare at her. Naruto starts to wonder whether this woman is telling the truth, pondering whether or not it was a bad idea to travel with her. Pain lets out another sigh and turns her down by waving her hand. You will have to save it for later, Amber, but we have to make sure we have everything for our operation. Get your belongings together before we recon our surroundings. When their eyes meet, hazel and ocean blue eyes blend together. Naruto and Amber both turn to Pain. Their faces amused. Naruto paces a few paces away from Pain, giving him time to stretch his muscles and joints. We are basic ready as we are. I just need to freshen up myself. We have no belongings, so we are basically ready to go. A tiny twitch of Pain's eyebrow occurs. Very well, for I myself have very little belongings as well, just a potion or two, and my weapon of choice. Freshen up and we can scavenge around the zone. Would be nice to know our surrounding before pulling anything off. Naruto nods toward Pain, his face displaying a lazy expression as he stretches and yawns. He whistles as he paces toward a small bowl of fresh water to wash up for the day. Yay, I'll get right on that. Amber walks over to Pain and stops to talk. Amber looks at Pain questioningly and asks, So, what weapon are you going to use? Looking at her figure for any indication of a weapon, Amber leans back and rests a finger on her chin, saying softly, I do not see any weapon on you. Amber's eyes are still searching Pain's body for any indication of a weapon. People would undoubtedly misunderstand them if they looked at them. Pain tilts her head in Amber's direction. Pain searches her person but does not discover a weapon on her. A brief silence ends as Pain looks at intriguing rocks. I could say the same for you. There is no weapon upon your person, But to answer your question, I'll be using a unique sword my brother gave him long ago. What will you be using? Amber's gloved knuckles slam against one another close to her chest, and she smiles with a playful smile on her face. Amber thrusts her fists in punches and declares, "My fists are my weapons, all I need are some gloves or gauntlets and I am ready to pummel anyone." Amber puffs out her cheeks at her casual dismissal. It would be nice if we knew how each other fought. The two female teenagers shift their eyes toward their third member's voice. It seems we are both close ranger combatants. What type of fighter is Naruto? If we come to a situation we need to work together. Naruto runs his hand through his blonde hair and says, "You're right about that. It would be a good thing to know how we battle to work together. I mean, teamwork can decide a lethal battle after all." His chest aches a little when he thinks of his friends back in Konoha. His mind drifts to a recent conversation. "I like to consider myself a close-range fighter. One use my fists to fight as well. I do have a weapon, just not too sure how to bring it out." Amber looks curiously at the teenager with the blonde hair. Batting her hazel eyes, Payne's eyebrows go up just enough. "What do you mean you can't bring it out? From what I know, there are no weapons that you just bring out from out of nowhere." He furrows his brow and gazes thoughtfully up at the unclouded blue sky. Amber responds with a air. When he asks, "Do either of you two know anything about Eidolons or Guardian Force?" Payne doesn't respond. He lets out a long sigh. Assuming she doesn't know, his shoulders slump with the little hope that some information was lost when he said, "Suppose you two do not know what those are then?" They wouldn't know. Of course, a millennium is far too long for anyone to be aware of. Naruto snaps his head in Amber's direction and says, "The Guardian Force were a group of mystical beasts who fought alongside a group known as Seed in ancient times." He studied her and her words with his blue eyes. Payne gives Amber a sidelong glance. Somewhat intrigued by her words, Payne is unaware that the information is thousands of years old, though. The Guardian Force are able to be junctioned to a member of the Seed fraction, increasing their physical and mental strengths as well as aid them in battle when called upon. Each of the mystical beasts became a Guardian Force in their own unique way. Inquisitive about what Amber has to say and whether it is all true, Naruto gestures a little closer. Naruto keeps asking Amber the same questions. "How do you know that? Where did you hear about this? Do you know of an Eidolon or Guardian Force known as Alexander?" Wondering what is going on with him in terms of his Guardian Force and Eidolon. Amber gently scratches her fiery red hair with her index finger as she tilts her head to the side. Amber looks up, her face contorted in contemplation. "I'm not sure how I know that, or where I heard it. As soon as you said Guardian Force, some information just popped into my head. It is really weird since I have never heard of that word till now." Payne interrupts Naruto as he leans closer to ask more questions. "Well, enough of that. We should be heading out about now. If my information is correct, the operation will begin in about 2 to 3 hours. We will need that time to recon our surroundings, and to prepare ourselves for any type of situation to arise." Naruto looks first into Payne's red eyes and then into Amber's hazel eyes. Her hazel eyes are sharply pierced by his ocean blue, wondering why he is staring at her so intently. Amber tilts her head to the side and blinks. He stretches his hand through his blonde hair and sighs. "Alright, so what do we do first?" "Reconnaissance." Payne turns and walks toward a special sword that is resting next to her possessions. She lifts the sword and fastens it to her belt around her waist, allowing it to swing freely. Payne holds a rolled-up map close by and says, "Yes, that will be the best course of action." As Amber and Naruto duck to watch, she paces over to a smooth rock and unfolds the map. Payne gestures toward what appears to be a beach. She points to an area that resembles a cliff on the map and says, "This will be the area I'll reinforce." Amber nods to Payne as she surveys her area, saying, "This will be your zone to reinforce, Amber. Stay on alert while you are in that area. Nearby are the Sin's Ponds. I have little doubt they will break free, and when they do you'll have to aid in bringing them down if possible." Amber taps her fist to her chest and smiles confidently. "Leave it to me. If that fiend gets free I will take him down, no problem." With a slight smile, Payne nods to Amber and says, "Okay, then I'll leave everything in your hands." She makes a motion with her hand and folds the map several times into a thin piece of paper, which she then pockets into a tiny pouch on the right side of her waist. Amber gives a mock salute and nods, while Naruto blinks at Payne, asking, "Now then, does everyone know their areas?" Naruto leans forward, demanding to know his combat area. "Hey, wait a minute, what about me? Where is my area?" he asks. Naruto yells at the two female teenagers, "Don't tell me you forgot all about me. No way am I going to sit this out. I'll survey on my own then." His chest heaves. Naruto shivers as Payne smirks. Her right arm was on her waist, and she was shifting her weight onto her left leg. The tilt of her neck conveys a look of amusement. "I thought it was obvious." Naruto looks at Payne with interest, his brows betraying his bewilderment. "Your area will be wherever the, what you call, big-ass whale fiend, shows up." Naruto's eyes seem to see right through pain, and he stiffens. Echoing squaws are emitted by a single seagull as it passes over the cove. Oh? Naruto laughs a little in embarrassment and rubs the back of his blonde hair with a corny smile. His head leans back in laughter as he says, I totally knew that I was just messing with you guys. His laughter gets louder. Amber looks away from the teenager with the blonde hair and crosses her arms. Idiot. High roads in Mian, to the blue world, birds sing loudly. Their music reverberates for everyone who wants to hear it, bringing joy to everyone who hears their upbeat tunes. Gazing up at the blue sky with cotton clouds fluttering in the wind, Jiraiya smiles. He inhales deeply and uses his hand to shade his eyes from the light. I enjoy being outside of the village. Because of this, there's nothing like spending time in nature away from the bustle of the towns. I would never leave the trees if only there were some attractive women in nature. He remembers who he is traveling with and brings his thoughts back to the verdant, lush land. At first glance, he sees two teenagers smiling and laughing as they converse. He smiles as he glances in a different direction and sees two adults conversing with one another as they pace the path. Waka and Lulu engage in a little idle chit-chat as he shifts his neck one last time. He spots two other members taking in the verdant, lush surroundings as the other members have fun. Kamari and Orin stroll silently along the dirt-filled path. He remembers his apprentice with his wild white hair blowing in a calming breeze. He is certain that Naruto would readily accept the proposal after learning what a guardian is. Hell, it's a chance to discover a new world during lift time, exploring a world that, aside from Naruto and himself, no other ninja have ever seen. He himself would be open to accepting the offer if it weren't for his mission to return Naruto to Tsunade. There's barely a centimeter drop in his smile. If anything, Naruto would benefit greatly from this. His burden would go unnoticed since he was an innocent victim of a tragedy. No one would criticize him. Being a guardian would make it easy for him to realize his dream of being respected by others. He has a unique heart, wishing to assist those in need and never giving in to someone who stands in his way. He could live a better life, indeed. However, he would have to leave everything behind to start over. His friends in Konoha would miss him, and worst of all, he would be hunted as long as Akatsuki is a threat in the elemental nations. His gaze is fixed on the blue sky, which is full of the cotton-white shapes that the Naru would constantly observe with jealousy. He lost himself in their beauty and now understands why the Naru can look into their joyful procession. His name is called, shattering his thoughts lost in his trance. He had not noticed his abrupt halt in movement as Yuna looks at him with her head cocked and a worried expression on her face. A smile appears on his face. Yes. Is there something you would like to ask? Are you alright? You stopped walking for all of a sudden? He smiles and gives the young lady in his path a nod. Yay, I'm fine. I was just thinking, that's all, so no need to worry about me. He shifts his gaze to look at the other members of the group. How much further till we leave this area into the next? In response to the white-haired man, Orin tilts his head slightly to the side and says, we are not much further from Mushroom Rock. It is just a few ways off from our position. Jiraiya nods and takes a deep breath from an unexpected gust of wind. His lips lift into a smile as oxygen leaves his lungs in a big exhale. The enthusiastic responses from Jiraiya's traveling companions include, well then, let us be on our way. I don't know about you people, but I would like to see a new place to explore. Then let's go, Jiraiya says, and everyone quickly follows her step forward in the direction of their near distinction. An hour later, Jiraiya is getting closer to a new location with big arches formed of smooth rock. As they arrive at their new location, he takes one final glance up at the Mian high road sky. His eyes stare into the dark clouds rolling into the sky, a sea of white and blue, while his lips drop into a frown out of instinct. His legs keep moving to avoid drawing attention to himself. Rain clouds are not those ominous clouds, brat. You'd better keep in mind the things I taught you about your environment. When his eyesight returns to the ground, he discovers his traveling companions engaged in what looks to be a dispute with some kind of foot soldiers. He picks up his speed after falling a few meters short. He sees a big cage on wheels with a big cover to conceal its contents, but his eyes dart to his left, warning of danger as he passed. His dark eyes peered through the cover. Hiss, dangerously. Jiraiya's gaze narrows toward the cage behind him. A breeze rustles through his clothes, and his feet stop in response to the sound. A trained ear could hear the sound of light clinging as his concealed kunai was pulled down his sleeves. What on earth was that? When his name is called, he quickly repositions his kunai, and his eyes return to normal. Yuna gives him a wave while wearing a slightly anxious expression. She is more concerned about something else than me. He quickly recognizes a new face in the group. The expression on his face causes Jiraiya's eyes to narrow just a little. He has seen that face in the political arena numerous times before. It has the appearance of a man hiding and plotting behind your back, but there is no danger or malice of any kind. Indeed, it is important to keep a close eye on this man. He quickly paces toward the group while waving a little as he puts on his political mask. Hey, Sorry about the delay, sort of got lost in thought there. With the man close by, Yuna smiles again and gives a gentle shake of her head. She's not sure why, but having this man around makes her feel safer and more comfortable. Maybe it comes from his personality alone. It is quite alright. She gracefully swirls her palm in the direction of the group's new assistant. This is Seymour Guado, he is a maester of Yevon. Observing the man's unusual hair color, Jiraiya bows slightly toward him and says, "It is an honor. I am known as Jiraiya, a pale aqua robe with a deeper blue hue that is engraved with a variety of colored designs. Additionally, he has distinctive features like claw-like nails and veins that show through his skin in a way. Jiraiya files it under a bloodline limit indeed. He would learn as much as he could about this man, but for the time being, he will have to perform for him. He might not be aware of the demands made by the man's statue, but his reputation as a skilled spy was not undeserved for the time being. He will comply until he learns more about this man and the precise reason behind his mask." Seymour mentally stores it for later use and makes a special bow toward Jiraiya. Seymour respectfully places his hands behind his dark blue robe and addresses the white-haired man, saying, "No, the honor is mine. Are you a guardian of Lady Summoner Yuna by chance as well?" He must exercise caution around this man. He appears to be distinct from Yuna's other friends. Jiraiya gestures at Seymour with a negative hand as he says, "I am sad to say that I am not. I am but a friend traveling by their side." Yuna's shoulders slump. She is aware that he cannot be her guardian. Of course, he has his own life and issues that he needs to resolve to accompany her on her trip. He wouldn't be able to set everything aside. He needs to locate his apprentice, Naruto. She would like to get together with Naruto, who is also one of her friends after all. They must miss one another. Seymour looks at a big cage being dragged close by. Jiraiya looks out of the corner of his narrowed eyes and immediately recognizes the cage from earlier. Seymour smirks as he turns back to face the passengers. "Might I incur we further our converse at the Crusaders' headquarters? We may speak in comfort, as I am sure you travelers must be weary from your journey. I would be most honored to accompany you toward this Crusader headquarters to further our conversation." Jiraiya nods. Putting his thoughts away for the time being, Jiraiya mentally sighs in exhaustion. He hates formalities so much. Actually, who is the bastard who thought of using formalities in the first place? Even more so than having a teenage apprentice, it makes him feel his age. "Oh no. The honor is mine, I assure you. If I may, I shall be taking my leave, for I have many unfinished business to finish before the evening. I shall have a squad of the Chocobo Knights to personally escort you to the Crusaders' headquarters. If I may not be as rude, but I must warn you, do not stray afar from the Knights, for there are many powerful fiends wandering the path. They shall protect you, so do no worry." Receiving a nod from Jiraiya, he executes bow and perfectly imitates his movements with a swirl. Seymour walks away in time with a nobleman from the group, saying, "I must bid you farewell for now." Jiraiya pauses briefly, then tilts his head at an angle as he looks down the rock-filled path. "Sorry if I just spoke for you all. It is an old habit I picked up back home." The pure white fluff in the ocean sky is corrupted by gloomy clouds that are forced by a sudden wind. Yuna looks perplexed as she paces close to Jiraiya's side. She looks at the elder while leaning forward and placing her hands behind her back in a naive childlike pose. She hops in front of Jiraiya, who looks down at her pouting face. "I don't mind you speaking up like that, but you haven't told me about your home yet. I am really interested in where you are from, you and Naruto." "I do not mind. I would also like to speak more to a maester of Yevon." He touzles her hair as though she were a whiny child, and Jiraiya smirks, which she was at the occasion. Jiraiya laughs and puffs up her smooth cheeks. "Haha. All you had to do was ask. What did you think I wouldn't tell you?" she asks. He looks away with a corny smile as he taunts the young woman in front of him, saying, Hey, I thought you were a grown-up and not a pouting child. I suppose you are a child after all." With an irritated expression, Yuna wiggles her head out of his firm grasp. "Sir Jiraiya, I am not a child, so please do not treat nor joke as if I am one." Her facade is shattered at a stifled chuckle from the man as his gaze is held away from her. Her tiny hand slides a strand of hair from her elegant face. "Are you mocking me?" Jiraiya asks, laughing uncontrollably as Yuna gasps and chastises him, which only makes him laugh more. As they watch the scene between Yuna and Jiraiya play out in front of them, Titus leans in Waka's direction. He whispers toward Waka, his eyes still watching. Waka doesn't say anything, but his eyebrows twitch for no apparent reason. "Hey, aren't they pretty close for only knowing each other for what, about a day?" Waka says, "I heard that they were talking late last night too." His eyebrows twitch in a new pace as a tick mark appears on his forehead. Maybe he likes her or something? He is a pervert in my opinion. Titus is forced to leap back as Waka repeatedly slams his foot into the ground, snapping. Waka swiftly turns to Titus, who is holding his yellow jack with both fists and wearing an angry expression. "RRRR. No way Yuna would ever like someone as him, or even think of it, she's way too smart and mature to even think of something like that. Titus finds it difficult to speak as Waka's strength shakes his body. Isn't that right? If he is a pervert, then we will both protect her from that pervert, right? It says. The group looks up the trail as they hear cavalry among the rocks and dirt and notice two bright yellow chocobos moving toward them at a moderate pace. Yuna steps back, just behind Jiraiya, and Jiraiya clears his throat. The two chocobos come to a stop at the group, and two female riders emerge as a male stops after running ahead. The top female rider instantly reveals herself to the group by shifting her chocobo to an angle. A tiny leeching smirk appears on her face as her dark skin and matching dull red pique Jiraiya's interest. Her ferocious gaze scans the group before settling on Yuna. Her tone was firm but gentle as she addressed the female summoner, asking, "Are you Lady Summoner Yuna by chance?" As she is told that she is on an equal footing with Jiraiya, Yuna takes a firm step forward. "I am. Is there something I may be able to do for you?" As the other female rider courteously extends her hand toward her, Lucille shifts her chocobo in the opposite direction and says, "I am Captain Lucille of the Chocobo Knights. It is an honor to meet you, Lady Summoner Yuna. This is my subordinate Elma, and beside her is my other subordinate Clasco." Elmo's shoulder-length black hair softly lifts in the wind as she smiles warmly from her smile at Yuna. Her light-tanned skin exudes a certain beauty that matches her personality. Little clings emanate from her headband as the loose beads clash. "Hiya. I am Elma of the Chocobo Knights. It's a pleasure to meet you," said Elma as he looks at her figure on the chocobo. Jiraiya's smirk grows even wider. He fills his lungs with a deep breath and salutes Yuna, saying, Just a second, let me catch my breath." Jiraiya's smirk turns to a frown as his hopes are dashed. "Oh. Lady Summoner Yuna, it is such an honor to meet you. I am Clasco of the Chocobo Knights." He was hoping for another attractive woman from the group, but unfortunately, he is not as lucky as his apprentice. Oh well, he would have to deal with two Chocobo Knights beauties. With a smile on her face, Yuna bows to the Chocobo Knights in an effort to attract the two stunning female Chocobo Knights. Jiraiya moves closer to Yuna and asks, "Please, the honor is mine. I am Summoner Yuna from Besaid Island. How may I be of service for you?" Slowly shaking her head in Yuna's direction, Lucille says, "It is not us needing service from you, Lady Summoner, but is here to serve you." Jiraiya immediately cheers up and his smile expands when he hears this. Even though the research was obviously far more important, he loved hearing that line while he was doing it because it always made him laugh so much. Indeed, it is far more significant. "We are here to guide you to the Crusaders' headquarters by order of Maester Seymour." Jiraiya feels deflated by the lovely captain's words. Even though his hopes were dashed, he continued to charm people. "She will soon be encircling his finger," Yuna answers, and Jiraiya laughs ominously to himself as he schemes with a grateful smile on her face. Yuna bows to the captain and says, "Yes, we would greatly appreciate your assistance. We are new to this area, so an escort would be delightful. Please show us the way." "Very well, Lady Summoner." Lucille firmly tugs on her harness, changing the direction of her chocobo, and pats her chest with her fist in salute. "Elma, Clasco, we shall lead them toward the headquarters. Ride at a slow pace to provide no difficult strain to keep with our pace." "You heard the captain. We'll be escorting them toward the headquarters. Don't go falling behind like you always do now." Elma laughs and taps her chocobo with her heel to go as she salutes her captain with a lazy smile. "Sure thing, Captain," she says, shifting her chocobo's movement toward the headquarter trail as her neck shifts toward Clasco. Clasco jogs to catch up for a friendly conversation with his peers while shouting hate. Since he does not yet have his own chocobo, he will never be able to. With a warm smile on her face, Yuna paces after them. Lulu shows up beside her and strikes up a conversation about the incident as they pass Jiraiya. Waka and Titus exchange whispers with evil smirks and a flicker of danger in their eyes. Their necks slowly turn. They retreat. Pacing behind the two female guards, both Orin and Kamari maintain their positions on either side of Jiraiya. Kamari's tail sways to the sound of the waves while he crosses his savage arms. Jiraiya looks at the blue beast of a man and blinks before saying, "Kamari, don't like that man. Something bad about him. Careful." It was the first time he had heard Kamari speak, and he had never imagined that someone could sound both human and savage. Orin looks off in the direction of an unidentified object that is floating in the far distance. Kamari grunts in agreement before he paces off toward the far-off group, his powerful steps raining. "I don't like this. We should not trust that Maester. Obviously his true intentions were hidden quite well. We should be cautious." With his hand shifting, Orin presses his black shades against his hidden eyes. "Perhaps it would be best for you to find your apprentice, and return home before being caught in some unwanted trouble." "Perhaps that would be best, but for now I am liking this place. Think I will stick around for a bit till my research is complete. Plus, if I know that idea of an apprentice, he will not leave easily." Jiraiya smirks and puts his fist on his hip. He waves casually before he gets off the ground, Following the traveling group step by step, the Chocobo Knights are leading the group toward the Crusader headquarters, and Orin is the last to join them. Jiraiya sighs wearily, his eyes wandering off into the dark ominous clouds. It looks like we won't be able to sleep for a day with the brat. Why did he expect a few days of rest when they got back to Konoha when he had never had a day's rest while training him? He ought to have been more aware. He looks down and notices a trio of people talking to each other. He observes that one is male and the other two are female. He looks at the girls and sees how beautiful they're becoming as tomboys. With their unusual hair color of fiery red and gray, they stand out from crowds, and their short to medium-length hair radiates their uniqueness and exotic figures with the right curves. His hopes are dashed when he sees that they must be teenagers based on their appearance and body type. He hardly gets a glimpse of the male's back before he lets out a dejected sigh. His cloak has a bizarre design, but all that is visible are his loose martial arts style pants, shoulder-length sun-kissed hair, and cloak. The angel wings caught his attention even though it was neither elegant nor simple. As he turns his attention back to the Chocobo Knights and follows them to the Crusaders' headquarters, Jiraiya shrugs. Rock with mushrooms. The atmosphere is filled with laughter and chuckles as three teenagers talk cheerfully to each other while a sun-kissed blonde, a dull gray-haired, and a fiery red-headed woman chat among themselves while looking out to sea. In addition to sharing jokes and enjoyable experiences, the three teenagers are talking about their past experiences and travels. Despite their youth and childlikeness, neither of them has a history of innocence to have such sad pasts while still being young. Nevertheless, they have persevered and discovered others who have faced comparable difficulties, and they are now getting ready for combat. However, they decide not to feel anxious or concerned without a care in the world. They decide to laugh and smile among themselves. A path leads to the depths of the mushroom rock, and the sun-kissed blonde turns away with a dying laugh. He gives a mental shrug and shifts his focus to the dull gray-haired women and the fiery red head. He looks between the two women and sighs slightly. "Oh, sorry about that. Felt like there was someone looking at me for a moment. So where was I? Oh yay. I finally got angry. The pervert never came back, so I went out to look for him. Do you know where I found him?" He asks. "I found him peeking at a hot spring. It was the first place I looked to." He continues his story, running his hand through his sun-kissed hair, saying, "I wanted to pull a prank on him. I do it every time I find him peeking, though I was angry that he wasn't helping me train, but peeking. I still don't know why I bothered to have him train me. Anyway, I wanted to pull a prank on him. I do it every time I find him peeking though. So I snuck past him. I used an illusion technique, and then went into the women's area. When I got there, the dressing area was empty, so I ran toward the sauna. I opened the door and yelling, 'There's a pervert peeking through over there.' I have never seen women get so angry in my life." He exclaims in laughter as he remembers the man's face when he was exposed and caught. He observes, but neither of the other two is giggling. He looks at them, and his laughter stops. Was it not funny?" Anger is visible in the eyes of both women as they glare at the blonde teenager. The gray-haired woman speaks as she shifts her weight onto her right leg and calmly crosses her arms over her chest. "You mean you used an illusion to sneak into the women's area of the sauna? Into the dressing room and the area where they were exposed in the sauna? Does that not make you a pervert as well?" He looks from the fiery redhead to the drab gray-haired women, but neither of them seems to shift their posture or expression. "What? You got it all wrong. I did not use the illusion to peek inside the women's bath. I would never do that. How can you call me a pervert for playing a prank on the real pervert?" He asks. "What's with that look? You two don't believe me? I'm not a pervert, I'm telling you." "Naruto, you're a pervert." With his arms slack, Naruto exclaims, I'm not a pervert." He crouches and spins around, writing the phrase, "I'm not a pervert," on the ground with his finger. He sulks, lowering his head and saying, I'm not a pervert. I tell you I don't like perverts, so how can I be one? You two are so mean to me. Okay, so I went into the women's bath side with an illusion. That doesn't make me a pervert, does it? I mean, I didn't go in to peek, but to prank the pervert." As her hand moves to rest on her hip, changing her center of gravity, Paine's lips quiver into a smirk as Amber watches Paine tease Naruto. She chuckles to herself. "What are you so gloomy for? It's not like you at all. We were only teasing you, so don't get all bent out of shape." Seeing Naruto in such a depressed state as opposed to his typically upbeat self is an intriguing sight. "Really? You really mean it? You really don't think I'm a pervert?" Naruto asks, his eyes turning a dazzling ocean blue as he looks up into Paine's piercing red eyes with hope. Amber rubs her eyes, deceiving herself into thinking Naruto has a rose garden background. Never taking her eyes off Naruto, Paine turns her head to her other shoulder. "No, I still think you're a pervert." Naruto sulks to him while crouching once more, his glittering eyes breaking as the sun rises higher in the sky. Paine looks off toward the ocean. Amber looks at Paine as she watches the sun rise and says, We should get into position. I think the operation may start in a moment or two. Naruto sighs and gets to his feet. Grinning once more, he looks at the two women watching the sun while a light wind tousles their hair. Yay. I was just thinking that let's split up into our position and lay low till the battle. We don't know if they would try to throw us out if we are caught. You two should be careful, though I don't want to have to save your butts if you get in trouble. The blonde's remark makes both of the teenage women smirk. Huh? You talking about me getting in trouble? You must have hit your empty head earlier. We aren't the ones who are going to need saving, but you. Pain humps a little as Amber responds, nodding her head silently in agreement with the fiery red head. Naruto laughs. Yeah, whatever you say, but I mean it. You two make sure to be careful, alright? Don't worry about us, we will just be taking care of the small fry. You worry about yourself. After all, you will be going up against Sin, right? Pain says, nodding her head in agreement. Naruto looks at the two women worriedly and says, I know that, but I need to make sure you two are careful, otherwise it will be nagging at me throughout the fight. As she backhands Naruto's shoulder, Amber lets out a little humph. She told you, did she not? We will be alright, we aren't weaklings. After all, we can take care of ourselves, so don't worry about us. Just focus on your part of the operation. We will do our part, so don't let us down. Between the three of them, Naruto smirks and says, who do you think you're talking to? I am Naruto Uzumaki, future Hokage of Konohakagure. No way could I call myself the future Hokage if I could not complete something this small. Let's do this. Yes, let's make sure that Fiend doesn't bother us. Amber smiles confidently and thrusts her fist out onto Naruto's. Pain calmly extends her fist toward the fists of the sun-kissed blondes and fiery red heads. It sounds like fun. She says you can count me in. The three friends begin their journeys with a battle shout from Amber, and Naruto. Pain dashes down a path toward the beach. Amber runs up a path toward the cliffs that overlook the sea, and Naruto dashes out toward the tower on the cliff that hangs over the ocean. At the Crusader headquarters at the same time, as a group of travelers with their Chocobo Night Guides pass through the Crusader headquarters, ominous clouds pierce the blue sky. Jiraiya studies the field in case of an emergency, because a ninja must always be ready for an attack, because it could end one's life in an instant if one is not prepared. Nevertheless, he senses an aura that is difficult to describe. It is not one of death, but rather of darkness that shadows the camp without any evil. With Jiraiya to her left and Lulu to her right, Yuna paces the headquarters, but she notices that both of them appear tense or cautious, and she can feel something that she cannot describe. It's a foreign atmosphere that she hasn't experienced yet. She looks at Lulu, whose exotic mature facial features remain forward and blank, and at Jiraiya, whose face is also blank but his eyes are still moving. Yuna slowly moves closer to Jiraiya as she tugs on his sleeve, asking, is something wrong? Nothing is wrong for the moment. Jiraiya responds to the small teen. Feeling a gentle tug on his sleeve, he had recognized Yuna because she had gestured closer to him. His eyes are still examining the field. What's wrong, and why do you ask? As Yuna walks next to Jiraiya, she clasps her fingers together in front of her face and says, well, I'm not really sure. I've never experienced this kind of atmosphere in my life, so what is it that I'm feeling here? She looks at Jiraiya, who is still quiet and unresponsive. I cannot really describe it myself, Jiraiya said, glancing quickly toward Yuna before turning back to survey the field and count the number of soldiers in their ranks. I can tell you this, but it is hard to explain. It is not a good feeling that I am certain about. Yuna looks down at her boots as her pacing creates gentle thuds on the ground they walk on. Jiraiya says it is not a good feeling, but he doesn't know. Would it be a bad feeling, or is it evil that she is experiencing? Wait, if it were, would he have just said that? If not, then who would? He is incredibly wise and knowledgeable for the brief time she has known him. Jiraiya, do you feel it too? Jiraiya moves to see Lulu because her features are the same as when Yuna looked at her. He then looks back at his own features before looking at the woman. Yeah, I do, but I can't describe the feeling. He says it has a very special aura that is neither good nor evil until I find the right words to describe it. I can only really call it unpleasant for the time being. Even though Jiraiya cannot see her, Lulu gives a slight nod of agreement. You are right, the atmosphere here is so disagreeable that I am at a loss for words. All we can do for the time being is stay vigilant. Something seems to be about to start. We've arrived, so be careful. When they reach their destination, Oren is greeted by a well-fed man wearing an orange and white robe and a matching cap. As they converse, he observes the tense atmosphere between them, realizing that there must have been some sort of disagreement between them since it is obviously none of his business. He will refrain from interfering in their affairs, but as he steps forward to join in the conversation, he is struck by a powerful aura that is more powerful than when they had arrived at their destination. As he swiftly scans the immediate area to identify the source of the aura, he spots a large cubed object covered in a violet sheet. As he focuses on the cubed object, he realizes it is not motionless, but rather moving, It is larger than the cage he had previously seen. It is obvious that there must be some sort of beast inside, and given the security it has, it must be a violent one. His ears pick up the sound of a heated argument from the group next to him, but his attention is on the caged beast, which is growing more hostile by the second. Jiraiya's senses detect Yuna calling his name, and before she can finish, he swiftly puts his hand on her shoulder. Yuna looks at Jiraiya bewildered as he puts his finger to his lips, urging her to keep quiet, his eyes never leaving the caged beast. The soldiers start to flee from the caged beast as he pulls his finger from his lips. Two soldiers tug on a nearby rope, removing the violet cover from the beast. Jiraiya's eyes enlarge and then contract as he sees the beast's form, which is as if he has never seen it before. The beast's head resembles a red centipede, its long, tan neck resembles the body and legs of a centipede, its base resembles a scorpion, and its two shell-like arms smash into the cage while it howls loudly. Since he trained with Sarutobi, Jiraiya can feel Yuna's emotions pouring into him through her small grip on his right arm. He can tell she is scared, but she is gathering the courage to not run from the enemy as she speaks. Her grip tightens on his sleeve. It's a Sinspawn. They have a Sinspawn in a cage, but why? As the group holds their ground beside Jiraiya and Yuna, Lulu's footsteps can be clearly heard. I see, so they plan to draw Sin to them while using this beast as bait. She said this is such nonsense. Do they genuinely think they can confine that beast for an extended period of time? Jiraiya frowns as he carefully pulls his arm out of Yuna's grasp and slips into a stance. Obviously they are unable to keep the beast fiend caged for long, he says, referring to the fiend's shell claws smashing into the steel bars as they cry out under the pressure. It appears that if we don't fight, it will attack us and innocent people. Lulu follows Jiraiya as she slowly removes from her person a tiny doll the size of something you would put on a key ring. For once, it seems like we are in agreement. She says we will have to fight, but since you have never fought with us before, we are unsure of how to incorporate your tactics into our own. As he looks at the fiend, Jiraiya smiles slightly and says, "Don't worry about that." Jiraiya looks left and then right as he considers his friend's weapon selections. Based on weapon selections, we'll have Orin, Titus, and Kamari in the front lines. I will be the one complementing your skills and techniques with mine. You and Yuna will take the backfield, and Waka and I will take the midfield, okay? A booming sound erupts from the field as the ground trembles before a response is given to the white-haired hermit. Jiraiya widens his footing for balance, and Yuna and Lulu help each other maintain their stance. Orin and Kamari both stab their weapons into the hard crust, allowing them to stand while Waka crouches close to the ground. Titus panics in surprise, causing his footing to collapse and collapse him toward the earth. Sin. Battle cries erupt from the battlefield as mysterious objects that Jiraiya describes as raining down from the heavens on the earth transform into bug-like fiends. In a matter of seconds his thoughts are shattered by a roar that erupts from his north, and steel shatters as the Sinspawn uses raw strength to force his claw through the cage. The fiend then charges toward the group with a battle roar, following instinct. Jiraiya finishes with a snake seal after rushing through a series of hand signals. Earth element, earth rising wall. Within seconds 3 walls erupt in a half-circle blocking off the fiend's relentless charge. Jiraiya remains in the snake seal as the beast rams into the earth-made walls. Change of plans. Waka, Kamari, and Titus take care of the smaller fiends. Lulu, Orin, and I will handle the major one. Yuna, you back both sides when necessary. Waka will watch over you to make sure you don't get hurt, so get moving. Jiraiya takes a deep breath and quickly exhales a dragon of flame, saying, "Fire element. Fire dragon flame blast." He drops the snake seal and flashes through another set, ending in the Taurus seal. The dragon of flame clashes with the immovable shell claw as the members of each party rush toward their battle assignments. Jiraiya drops the snake seal, and the fiend howls as it smashes through the wall of crust. The beast curls into a sphere, its shell-like claws protecting its body from the searing heat. Orin lunges forward with his sword poised to dismember the fiend, but his blade is forced to halt upon impact with a dull thud. Orin tilts his head to the side at the outcome and then retreats back to Jiraiya as they plot their new strategy. Jiraiya frowns at what he has witnessed, and if he had to classify this fiend according to the elements of the elemental countries, he would be earth. His defense is strong, and he must devise a plan to either chip at his defense or shatter through with an unstoppable force. We will need to see what else this fiend can do, Jiraiya says, glancing back quickly to catch a glimpse of Lulu before turning back toward the fiend's head. While you, Lulu, will attack from a distance, concentrate on his head, and Orin and I will attack up close. We'll strike him with a swift, forceful blow once we know what he's capable of. Lulu lets her live doll stand next to her while her hands reach for the empty, dark sky, and Orin nods as he perfects his stance, ready to strike at any moment. Understood. Jiraiya smiles slightly and says, "This is what adventure is all about." Meeting new enemies, comrades with special skills you've never seen before, exploring new places, and most importantly, feeling alive. Let's take this guy down. Oren and Jiraiya run toward the fiend at the same time, while two different trails trail behind them. The main beach faces the sea. Take them all out. Be merciless. As the Chocobo Knights and Crusaders charge out to sea, battling hundreds of Sin's pawns that are falling from clouds into the dark sea. Battle cries dominate the now dark beach. Captain Lucille continues to ride her personal Chocobo, charging through the countless spawns as her battle instincts take control of the once calm and collected captain. As her Chocobo rams incoming spawns from the front, her sword pierces through fiends on her right, arching her blade over vertically and striking a foe on her left. Lucille yells in rage as her body twists, slicing a fiend in mid-air from her rear horizontally. She then returns to her starting position and continues to yell in rage as she thrusts her blade forward, piercing an approaching fiend. She has become vulnerable to attacks from all directions and, in the brief time that has passed, she has failed to notice that her comrades have been pushed back by the onslaught of spawns. Before she can retreat, 4 fiends jump from all 4 directions. Her battle instincts kick in, and she thrusts her blade toward her left, killing one of the 4 Lucilles, then slashes it horizontally toward the front, slicing the second fiend in 2. As she prepares for her third attack, she feels a sudden pain from her attacking arm, and blood seeps from her forearm, a metallic object embedded in her skin from a long-range spawn. Lucille prepares herself to defend herself as much as she can against both attacks, but her instinct tells her that this is her death. While dying on the battlefield is a great honor for a soldier or a unit captain, she doesn't feel honor or pride despite the adrenaline pumping through her body. She is afraid because she can't smile, feel the wind on her cheek, create happy memories with her loved ones, or find someone to return home to. Lucille regrets that her life will end abruptly and without warning, but that is the way of the battlefield, and she has chosen the sword path. Look forward, go forward. Lucille hears a faint whisper from a woman's voice, and as she opens her eyes and looks down, she sees a black-clad warrior with a vicious blade slicing mercilessly through the 2 offending fiends. Never stand still, retreat, and you will age. As she spins around with her sword thrusting in a diagonal slash, she slashes through the fiend's front lines with a swift feline movement, creating a gap in the mass before slicing a charging fiend in 2. Hesitate and you will die. Lucille feels a long moment go by, but reality won't stop for a second. The unidentified warrior slowly turns toward the injured captain, her piercing red eyes staring down at her figure. Do you choose to live or die? Lucille looks down at her wound before the ground, and with a groan, she applies a first aid spell to it. The dull gray-haired woman turns away from her, preparing her sword at her side before sprinting into the horde of fiends. She fights her way in with her newly discovered comrade in arms, grasping the hilt of her sword and following the unidentified warrior. Location of Sinspawn boss. As he stops, his grip tightens on his pole, and he grunts as his footing skids along the hard earth crust. His eyes narrow dangerously toward the spawn minions, whose wings flicker brightly, and his instincts ping frantically, warning him that danger is imminent from the minions. Wings dangerous. As he moves into a defensive stance for the impending threat, Kamari raises the tip of his spear. Yes, you don't have to say that to me. These fiends are supposed to be small fry, but they are much stronger than when he first encountered them in Xanarkand. Their speed, strength, and intelligence are much greater than those within his first encounter, but he had also gotten stronger since then from their many battles against fiends. So why is he having so much trouble against these? If it weren't for Yuna and her white magic, he might not be standing today. Titus grunts as his free forearm wipes a tiny drop of blood from his lips. Many of the approaching fiends have not gone for the front lines but have instead ambushed Yuna, forcing him to fight waves of fiends alone or with the limited assistance that Yuna can offer as a support caster. Wakka's lungs struggle to maintain a high supply of oxygen, so he pants a lot. Being a support fighter in the backlines doesn't require much effort, but accuracy, skill, and tactic. But these fiends are not stupid. Kamari, Titus, and Wakka protect their vitals with their weapons or arms, but they are unable to avoid the flurry of deadly spikes. The fiends' wings flutter into the dark sky with a piercing screech, glowing a solid color as they flap their wings forward. Another piercing screech vibrates through the air, and deadly needles rain toward the group of fighters. Stop physical force, armor of light. Her statue weakens as she keeps concentrating her mental strength to keep the shields strong from their barrage. Yuna shifts her footing for balance as she grips her staff parallel with the earth and closes her eyes in concentration. Blue light springs forth from the ground in front of the 3 warriors who are fighting against the horde of spawns. The blue light shields against the path of the warriors' deadly spikes as Yuna squeezes her eyes and the spikes slam into the shield of blue light, turning into dust upon impact. Kamari looks at Yuna's exhausted state while he silently stares at her, noticing her short, rigid breaths getting faster, her sweat dripping down her body, her hair sticking to her face, and the fact that her footing is starting to vibrate from just standing on her feet. He turns his head and looks at the ground while pointing his palm at him, his yellow bestial eyes looking distantly at his palm while his fur stands on end. He looks back at his palm and then again at Yuna, clenching his fist tightly with gritted teeth. As he takes 2 steps back from the shield, he lifts his javelin and stabs the ground close to his feet. Waka and Titus watch in wonder as he soars through the heavens over the spawns. While Yuna cannot see because she is still holding the shields with what little strength she has left, gravity soon has a greater effect on Kamari as his acceleration into the sky drops to 0. As his right knee rises toward mid-chest level, Kamari lifts his javelin over his shoulder. He then launches himself toward the ground, roaring loudly before slamming his right foot into the ground with a thunderclap that breaks the ground. The earth's crust rises and falls as fragments of the web engraved on its surface fall upon one another from the thunderclap, and the spawns trapped within the web are buried beneath its cold crust. Crushed upon their weight, the earth rises from the ground as a light emanates from the web engraved in the earth before lightning crackles upon the spawns. Kamari slams his javelin's blunt end into the ground while crouching on all fours, his blue fur standing on end as a deep growl rumbles through the air. He slams his fist into the ground and lets out a berserk roar as he lashes out with his claws toward the closest spawn. After killing a fiend, Kamari erupts in a cry of triumph at any sudden movement, slashing, clawing, and biting as if he were possessed like an untamed beast imprisoned in a corner. Titus, who had known that Kamari was not entirely human, is amazed by his sudden outburst of rage. He looks at Waka, who is also watching with a grim expression on his face, and asks, "Hey Waka, is this a good or bad thing? Even though Kamari is destroying them, is that how he should behave?" Waka stays silent as he watches through the blue wall of light, his body tensing upon every defeated foe that had crossed Kamari's path of rage, his silent expression answering Titus's question. Of course, this is a bad thing. Kamari's race is different from the Guado. Unlike the Guado, they have dominating feral instincts. They must learn how to interact with humans in Guado, but if their feral instincts were able to take full control, all of what they have learned could be lost. If only he could break through the barrage from the front line spawns, but Kamari had broken toward their rear from the sky. But Waka's expression is unlike anything he has ever seen on the happy man's face, and Titus looks down, looking at the earth in confusion, but they are powerless to help. Titus slams his fist into the ground with a pound from his strength. TCH, does being useless feel like this? With every ounce of will she has, Yuna finds what power she has to protect her companions from their assault, but her consciousness is hanging loosely. The wall of light slowly starts to crack upon the lack of strength holding the wall together, and Yuna forces more magic power toward the light as she is almost collapsed. Yuna's knees start to tremble from the repeated barrage of spikes upon her barriers protecting the fighters within the deadly path, their continuous assault dominating her mental power. Shockwave. The earth splits in two, and the yell of a female is soon followed by a crashing boom from the front line spawns, collapsing them under the rubble as the earth splits. The barrage of spikes is destroyed as the front line spawns are buried under the cave in chunks of earth. The blue wall of light fades as Yuna falls to her knees from the magic strength she had to pour into the advanced spell, her breath heavy and quick as she looks up to her companions and says, "I'm sorry I tried." Whoa! Titus looks at the spawn's destroyed front lines and toward the source, where he sees a woman he believes to be close to his age standing with her fist at the earth's split, her smirk visible on her lips as her hair falls loosely over the side of her smooth skin. She lifts her fist off the ground and cracks her knuckles as she stands. Her left foot slides forward as her left arm stretches forward in a martial arts stance, a smile spreading across her lips as she says, "Sorry I'm late, but I got a little lost on my way. Fiery Amber has arrived to save the day." Amber's force continues to advance as she follows the moment in a full spin with an axe kick. Followed by her spin into the skull of a second, she quickly moves her front and back legs toward the spawn, her palm colliding with the skull of the first unlucky spawn. As she effortlessly navigates through the spawns, Titus looks at the fiery red head and smiles in awe before launching his first into the air in front of his chest. "All right, that's what I'm talking about." Titus quickly turns to face Waka and says, "This is our opportunity." With a battle cry, Titus charges into the fray and slashes into innumerable spawns. "I'm going in. You protect Yuna, she will need the protection." With her staff loosely held within her free hand at her side, Yuna wobbles on her feet with Waka's assistance. Waka rushes to Yuna's side and puts her arm around his neck, helping the young woman to her feet. "Forgive me, I was not strong enough," she says in a whispery voice as her chest heaves with her breathing. With a cheesy smile on his normally happy face, Waka asks, "What are you talking about?" "You performed admirably. We wouldn't be here if it weren't for you, yeah." Waka speaks honestly, as he is astounded by her ability to hold that wall of light from the barrage. The spell is complex and requires a lot of magical and mental strength to hold for extended periods of time. He assists her in walking to a nearby boulder and sits her on it using his free hands. He removes a bottle containing a blue liquid from a pocket on his clothing, saying, "This will help you recover some of your magical powers. Drink it and take a little break because it's not very strong." "Thank you, Waka," Yuna says, reaching out with a trembling hand and grabbing the bottle, bringing it to her chest. When she looks at Waka's face, she sees a loving smile that makes her want to come back as soon as she can. "Avoid worrying excessively, rest as much as you need. You've done enough." Waka smiles and flexes an arm while using his free hand to pat his bicep. "Besides, I can't let you and them take all the credit, yeah. We can take care of the rest, yeah." As Yuna lets out a tired laugh, Waka calms down inside. "I have to go help them fight the fiends off now," she says. "You take that potion and get some rest." Waka takes a small spherical pill out of another pocket and says, "I'm off, and remember, rest up. Y'all, I'll be back soon as I can." With a little crack, the pill swells into a blitzball before turning and running into the chaos inside the spawns. Waka uses his free hand to wave at the young woman. Yuna looks at the blue liquid, then pops the cap and takes a small gulp of it. Despite Waka's praise, she feels that she needs to get stronger so that she won't be a hindrance to them and can be with them throughout the battle. Yuna takes another gulp of the potion and places the bottle on the boulder. She rises to her feet with the help of her staff and walks slowly toward the battle. She was never one to listen to Waka. Overhanging precipice. Still sitting on a cliff out of sight, staring out to sea, Naruto is bored and crosses his arms while sitting cross-legged. "Dude, what's taking so long? Shouldn't he be here already?" He groans and scratches the back of his head before letting out a sign. "Dude, I detest waiting. It's really dull." His face is twisted as he gestures up and down with his palm on his left knee while looking out to sea. Boom. "What?" Naruto collapses back onto his rear as he looks around in all directions. He hears footsteps of those above him as he quickly stands to his feet. What's going on up there? He hears a beast's screeching roar, and just as he is about to jump toward it, someone shouts at him. "Sin." Naruto stops and turns around toward the sea, his eyes staring at the massive figure emerging from the water. He smiles and uses his thumb to wipe the corner of his lip before biting it, saying, "There you are, you little bastard." He goes through a series of hand signals before launching himself toward the sea, holding his wrist with his left hand and thrusting his right hand down. Summoning technique. As the battle approaches, a great puff of white smoke envelops the sea.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.